Okay. Well, we're live now. I This is just like a birthday live stream for me and Michael here. My birthday was yesterday. His is tomorrow. So if some other people might be able to show up. Oh, one sec. All right, had some like weird feedback happen there.
Oh,
All right, so yeah, no, like we're just gonna kind of hang out and talk. We might be able to get some more people coming in here and there, but I would like to because we were just talking about like shows that like we
episodic
start
shows.
watching. Yeah, that like we would start watching and then it's canceled and like you never get a satisfying conclusion. So
Right.
the one we were talking about like just a minute ago was that Terra Nova.
Yeah, Terra Nova. If no one's familiar with it, it was basically set in the future where basically all of our resources have been stripped down, and it's a bleak future where like no one really survives, and they paint this really good picture at first, and the whole plot is they go back in time and try and start civilization over, with plentiful resources, and don't try and be such, goddamn animals, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and great show. Had a little bit of its foreign points, but then after the first season, they just stopped making it.
Yeah. And that's
And
one like because I saw like people described it as kind of like Jurassic Park meets Lost, which I think was a decent way to kind of
I,
describe it.
I mean, it wasn't. It was its own entity because it's just like they went back in
Yeah,
time, like the whole
I would say
storyline was them
just to
go.
give somebody like a vague
Yeah,
like idea
yeah,
of what it was like what the feel of the show kind of was. Yeah,
yeah. There
but
were
yeah, I know
some
what you're saying. It
there
was
were some
definitely like
dinosaurs.
very unique.
Yeah, there were some
Yeah,
dinosaurs that were pretty cool. I think that's what it was. They spent too much on the visual effects that they didn't really need to make the show
could have
great.
been. Yeah.
They just weren't given
So
the
there
materials
was
ready.
yeah, no, there was one show, and I can't for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. And like I was sick one day, and my family was out, like they left in the morning to do something, and I just stayed at home. And so I was scrolling through Netflix, and this was like years and years ago now, like I don't know, probably like 7 years ago or something.
Hmm.
Um, so like I just started scrolling through Netflix, trying to like is there anything interesting on, and something grabbed my attention. It was one season, so I was like, why not? And I started
Right.
watching it, and I ended up watching that whole season that day, and this was like like hour long episodes, and there was like 20 some episodes I think. It might have been less than that, but like I do remember I watched the entire season that day.
Hmm.
I got so wrapped up into it. It was so interesting. And it was like there was this like these weird like creatures that were like surfacing, and
Hmm.
they were like really deadly. They would give off like EMP stuff, like these EMP pulses, I think. And like they were basically like impossible to kill. And they were really massive, and like they were causing all the stuff to happen, like bad stuff to happen in the ocean, like here and there, and like knocking out power in different cities and stuff. And the government was like trying to keep it quiet, and then like for a lot of it, it turns into this whole like mystery of this like reporter trying to like uncover the whole like what's going on.
Hmm.
Then there's like it was like part monster movie type thing where they had these like giant like sea creatures. It was also part like ET because this kid finds like a baby one and is like they can go on like the baby can go on land a little too. So it was like amphibious, raise it but keep it quiet, like keep it hidden and everything. And it was really interesting. And like there's this whole thing like she does this like her and this other guy like make this kind of like makeshift submarine and like dive into the ocean and manage to get these pictures of these giant things like swimming around in like this like lava like crater thing in the ocean. And
Yeah.
they find out like the creatures were like the result of some like crazy genetic manipulation thing that this company was doing. And they're trying to keep it like hush hush now, which is why they're like when she like gets the footage and everything and she like sends it to this reporter, the news company gets a hold of it, and they basically like try to like discredit her immediately and like frame her for a bunch of stuff, and like they really try to like make her seem like a like not a reliable source of information. So all this stuff keeps going on, and then like eventually like at the end of the season is like the creature things like causes massive tsunami, and I think it might have been like New York or something where they were. It was some coastal city, and like they're like rushing to get to this. All this water is just like completely covered, like halfway up these skyscrapers,
Right.
And then you can see these like giant like monster things like swimming in between skyscrapers and stuff.
Okay.
And then it ends, right there, like basically on a giant cliffhanger. So I'm like, well, God, can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah, it sounds exciting
So,
at least. And
it was amazing. It was so fun, and I wish I could remember the name of it.
And what did you say? It just ended after one season, or you could only find the one season?
It was one season. It got canceled. I looked it up, and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check this. One season. Like, I got so into it. I was so sucked into the storyline. I wanted to like know more about the creatures. I wanted to see more of the creatures. Like this and that, and it's just I was so pissed, and like it becomes hard for me to like trust shows now because I'm like, okay,
exactly.
Like I'm gonna like I want to watch this, but I'm gonna make sure like there's it like
make sure it ends.
Yes, like I don't keep up on like shows that are currently going now very much, but I will go back and like watch a show, like kind of binge watch it. But it's more satisfying when you can watch from the start to the conclusion, because like if it gets canceled early and they don't get a chance to like wrap up a story, it's so difficult to get past that. Like, I mean, it's not even just like dramas or like sci-fi, like even just comedies. Well, that'll happen too. I really liked My Name is Earl, and that ended on like a ridiculous cliffhanger, and the whole show ended. I was so mad. I'm like, man.
I think I saw a couple episodes of that.
Yeah, it was a funny show.
See, like that's why I love cartoons, because cartoons they always have that same formula. No matter what happens, everything goes back to complete normal at the beginning of the next episode. Kenny can die. All kinds of things happen on Simpsons, like Homer goes to space and then he's back at the power plant the next day.
Yeah, exactly. And
the one show, because I actually after that Terra Nova thing, it kind of ruined my experience. So the only one show that I did try and get into, and I'm actually waiting for I actually got to go check it out, but it was a Medici show. It was basically like a historical documentary show almost.
Oh yeah,
but it was like it was actual show. Dustin Hoffman played the patriarch.
Nice.
Well, Cosimo. The real patriarch is Giovanni, who wasn't in the show, but I'm just like, well, at least if this one gets canceled, I already know what happens. Spoiler alert: everyone ends up dying.
Right. There was a show, like, I mean, they have a bunch of shows out now, but it was like on the Borgia from the Renaissance era, with all like they were part of the whole like plot to assassinate the Medici and everything.
Yeah.
And I really was always been fascinated with that, and I was like really into the show, and then it just kind of like stopped eventually, and I have no idea what happened with it, or I was like, what the hell? So, but I mean, now there's like a bunch of different ones, so it's easy to find shows about that now. But it just makes it very like hard to like you almost don't want to get really into a show, because you're just like, okay, is this going to go away? Is this going to end fast? Or you can get really into a show and it can end up being like Lost or something, where like the show is so good, and then like the last season just such a bummer. Like it just doesn't satisfy you in any way. It's too I don't know, it's just not as good as the rest, and you just kind of feel like you don't feel satisfied.
And Lost, that was a long time ago now, and like this is what I say about both shows, and movies have a little bit longer of a thing.
Yeah,
like a show doesn't become great, or a movie doesn't become great until 5 years after, when people are still talking about it. You can have all the box office hype you want. If you're still talking about it 5-10 years later, it's a good movie.
Yeah. And there's I would say like, because I mean that's one of the nice things about movies, is they can kind of wrap things up. Like TV shows typically like the X-Files. I love the X-Files, and thank God when they ended the show, like, well, it wasn't like the greatest ending. They wrapped up storylines and things like that, but like it would have been the worst if that show had gotten canceled at the end of one of the seasons, because like Chris Carter loves doing cliffhanger endings at the end of his seasons, and like almost every X-Files season except for like maybe the first one ends on this big cliffhanger. And it's like you can't watch the end of like one of the seasons without like just immediately needing to go watch the next one.
Right,
and then
right.
The sucky part though is, because Chris Carter was so good at it, they did the spinoff, The Lone Gunman, and I loved that show. It was only one season, and it was so fun. I loved The Lone Gunman from the X-Files. But he ends that show, that season ended on a big old cliffhanger, and there was no like. Luckily, he kind of like loosely tied up, like just kind of like showed that they got out of the situation they were in as kind of like an offhand thing in the X-Files, and then they actually dedicated a whole X-Files episode to like wrapping up storylines from the show. So like you could get some satisfaction, but it's frustrating when you get really into it.
Oh yeah,
David from the chat.
That's a good show when they leave you hanging on the end of a season, but
yeah, it's not bad like when you get to go into the next season, but like
exactly
when that's where the show ends, frustrating.
Yeah, but Terra Nova, go ahead and read the comments. Sorry.
Well, David from the chat was saying the show Kings, only one season produced, best show like ever made. I don't know. I think I've heard of that.
Oh, Ben's here.
Hi guys.
Oh, hey Ben.
What's up, Ben?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just I saw your tweet. I was like, I need to jump in, say hi.
Hey,
and all that.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know how much time you have, Ben, but we were just talking about like shows, like episodic shows that you really get into, and then they get canceled too early, and you don't they end on a cliffhanger or something, and you never get resolution. Have you ever been like burned really bad by a show like that?
Show that got cancelled. Man, I've watched a lot of shows.
Yeah.
Not that I can particularly think of. Not those two. I remember there was this kind of Victorian era drama that kind of stopped short and kind of a lot of questions unanswered. That was a BBC from like a decade ago, but good show. And yeah, we never found out what happened.
Yeah.
So that's still in my mind.
Yeah, that's one of those things though, like if a show gets popular enough, like even when it ends in a good way, like comic books tend to pick up afterwards. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, X-Files, like shows like that, like got picked up in comic book form, even after shows had like a good ending. But like the problem is if a show's like not popular enough to like, and it gets canceled, like comic books typically don't get to like will want to pick up that. So like you never get a good resolution. I think the only time a show got canceled and it was actually good, I mean, I'm sure there's other examples, but like Firefly is a great example of a show that was amazing, set up a lot of like mysteries and like questions and stuff, and because it got canceled you didn't get it, but then Serenity comes along and you got some kind of a satisfying conclusion to it at least.
Okay. But more recently I was thinking of the Netflix shows that were canceled, so like Daredevil and Jessica Jones and all of them.
Yeah,
which I think is a thing because they were quite good shows. Although they worked on a season basis, like if you missed one season, it didn't really matter if you hadn't seen the other. But I think cutting it short like that was a bit.
I'm hoping Disney might reboot them in some form
on the new streaming
because they're doing a lot of stuff, and I'm like, if they reboot it and put it on that platform, then maybe they can actually like intertwine it with some other characters from the movies and such. And
yeah,
who knows? With the Netflix thing though, like real quick, did you guys see like the Haunting of Hill House at all? Like that season?
No, I saw the old movies.
Yeah, the movies aren't great. Like especially the one with like Owen Wilson, and that movie's terrible. But they were like, because there's a lot of material and there's a lot of things where like especially like Stephen King books are a great example. There's so much material; it's hard to cover it in a movie. And I'm kind of hoping that Netflix might like actually pick up some like good Stephen King stories, because the nice thing about like the Hill House is they had not just like 2 hour movie time, they had like a full season to develop these characters and do this whole story. But they also, because like they're talking about doing another season, but it's going to be like an anthology, like American Horror Story, because they're not going to go back to that thing. So it's like they also don't have to drag it out. They can like start and complete a story and then leave it there, and it's good and it's done. I'm actually hoping that we get to see more stuff like that from Netflix. That would be kind of nice, where like you don't have to worry about, is there going to be a second season? You don't need one. It's a good, satisfying story. You're done.
Yeah. And you know, I know it was supposed to be a fun stream. We're trying to stay away from politics, but with Ben here, I gotta ask
No, go
for
for
a
it.
little update, for a little update and insight into the whole France situation, because
Oh,
these are all
man.
the closest one to this.
I've been I'm currently a day away from finishing university, and so I've had my head down working on this station. So I haven't. I mean, I have. Obviously, I'm up to date. It's very quiet now because election season is coming up. We've got the European elections coming up, so it's suddenly all the politicians on their best behaviors. You know, everybody's, you know, they're going around France, they're doing their stuff. It's a lot more quiet. The protests are still happening to a very much smaller extent nowadays. Yeah, they only rally up about 60,000 people in the whole of the country. I think the media have played their job very well. They've done their job very well and kind of put everyone off the idea of going out in the streets. And it was also sadly, I say sadly, is kind of taken over as well by more extreme individuals, more extremist individuals, which is a shame. So the Black Bloc, as they are called, are a kind of unionist party that kind of just would maraud Paris and break everything, essentially. So it's a bit frustrating. And so they kind of take over that now, and people just, it's not that they've stopped caring, it's there have been changes. It's just that they've got to the point now where they've moved on, basically. They've kind of accepted that Macron's not going to change. He's made some changes, but it's never going to be exactly how they want it, because everybody wants something different every time. So it's frustrating for some. For the average person, I'd say it's going to be better anyway.
Okay. Now is for this election, 2 questions. When is it, and is Macron up for election? Election on.
What was that? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
When is your elections, and is Macron up for his re-election, or is he, still safe for another year?
So these are the European elections coming up, the European Parliament elections.
All right.
That's on the 26th of May, I'm pretty sure. So that's like a party-based thing that then they go on to the European Parliament, because we all love complicated politics and the complicated parliamentary system. So yeah, it's. I think the right parties, so Le Pen, are going to make big gains. Macron has, I think, messed up too much now. For example, in the next presidential elections, there's no way. I mean, I'd be surprised if he even ran. Like, there's no point in him running in the next presidential election anyway. And this time around in the Europeans, his party will be pummeled by the other groups. So we have the RN and the EDR and the PSPPND and all of them. It's not looking good for him, his party, and next presidential election he will be out very quickly, I think.
Yeah. Now when is the presidential election?
That'll be 2022, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. Yeah.
Just biding your time here.
Yeah.
Gotta wait a little bit longer.
Yeah. I think he'll just keep his head down now. He'll just keep his head down and try and finish off on a high. But I think he's still ranging at like 27-30%. which isn't very high, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah.
I've noticed like a kind of a distinct lack of media frenzy about that lately. Like it was all you could see for a while. I mean, I know the media kind of latches from one thing to the next, but I was like, this has been real silent about it lately. I haven't seen much at all.
Well, I
It's
think
been
it's
silent because there hasn't been that much, realistically. That's one of the reasons. But also, I also don't trust now the media in France or in the UK because I actually I find out more stuff on Twitter by just checking Twitter and typing in Paris and
It's
in
not
the search. It's like that's
not
how
a bad thing to just kind of have a healthy distrust of the media. I haven't found
No.
Oh yeah,
to be very reliable,
I mean,
regardless of
they're
country.
business too.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think I said last week, and obviously say nothing's really been happening lately, but even the whole thing when it was first coming together, there wasn't really much coverage. You really had to search for that thing. You had to, know what was
Yeah,
going on. Like,
I remember that.
You talk to the average person on the street, they don't know that what's going on in France or even Venezuela. Like, they're too busy. Listen to what's going on with Trump's Twitter and the Russia collusion.
Jeez, half the people in the U.S. don't even know what's going on in the U.S.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah. No, I remember we did that that stream. It must have been early December, end of November last year when the Yellow Vest was really taking off. I remember that was quite a decent stream because I remember you guys obviously didn't have all the information as I was.
Yeah, I think that's. I remember I couldn't make that one, but I knew I wanted to get you on one of the streams to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because like you were actually showing. I remember you were like linking to me some stuff on Twitter, like showing me like videos and stuff that like we're having the hardest time finding. Like all these sources just were like really ridiculously hard to get to. Like you had to dig really hard to find some stuff.
Yeah. I also when I was over back in over the Christmas holiday, I went into town and I posted the video. We were tear gassed for no reason. Whilst we were in town back in mid-January. I was with a friend. We were going to a basketball match, and we just wanted to go for a drink before. And there were protests going on further down into the city, and we just kind of got mortared with what they called gas canisters, and we were just surrounded by tear gas. It's just awful thing.
Yeah, tear gas is no fun. I remember that shit from the military. I mean, like I can imagine it's.
Well, especially we were nowhere near any sort of, protest, and we were literally by ourselves just walking, and it just came out of nowhere. However, I must admit that gone.
No, go ahead.
They've recently, actually today, an article came out, and they're starting to acknowledge the police brutality that's been going on, which I thought was bold, and I thought that's quite a good thing, because there has been a lot of it, and so Le Monde, which is I feel like is quite a decent newspaper, they wrote an article today explaining that there has been police brutality that needs to be addressed, but they also understand why there's police brutality. Again, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I already them
middle thing. Like trying to remain neutral almost. Does it sound like?
Yeah, it's more
or
like
just not to piss off one side or the other too much.
Yeah, it's just like trying to stay in the good books of everyone. It's I understand that yes, there's brutality, but then was it warranted, etc. And it's like,
which I don't think it's. I mean,
you
not.
know what it is like a lot of things that you see in America now is just like the level of it is just ridiculous because like. You may see like a cop like take like one swing at a guy to like get him down to like arrest him, whatever. But it's like now you're seeing like like 5, 6, 7 shots, like people are down, like still going. It's like
it's
letting the dog like actually letting the dog bite the guy, like sitting there like good dog, like letting the guy, like that's too far. Like I like people try and argue with me about this, but it's like like. Someone like spits at a cop and like a cop like just kind of like sweeps their leg. I'm like, okay, like that's just kind of payback.
Well, I
that,
mean, like that's the thing too, though. Like if somebody just went and punched
that,
out
that, that, that becomes
like
a
a
human thing.
person,
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
like it's like that's a human reaction. Like if you're
Right.
if somebody's like kind of just like assaulting you or like being degrading to you, like I mean, if you're just standing there, I do think though, like if you're actively
Yeah.
like like beating people down and stuff, like you can't really complain if somebody spits in your face. But
Right.
if you're just kind of standing there because your boss said go stand there, like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you're not doing anything, I don't know. Like some people get pretty insane. Like you watch a lot of those like Antifa riots and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's ridiculous just how like people like
And
lose their shit on the cops or just everybody around them. Like if they
Mm.
even like slightly perceive somebody to like not agree with them,
yeah,
they'll like
and that's
flip out.
that's not even the genuine crazy people that are really out there. That's just a bunch of spoiled little brats throwing
Yeah,
shit
yeah,
in
that's
public.
like yeah, it's not even like the people who are
It's
actually
not like it's not like the meth heads that are just like like running rampant and like spitting in your face for like walking by them.
yeah.
But it's funny because there's obviously elements of theory behind that, and the theory behind that kind of mob mentality is contagion theory. And
Mhm.
you one person who's acting a bit sporadic and a bit wild, and then other people they're like, oh well, this is kind of cool. I'm going to try and do a bit of the same, and then it kind of devolves into madness, and that's how
Yeah,
riots.
mob mentality. That's I mean,
Yeah,
it happens a lot. Like
yeah,
a
it's
lot of
great.
people just get swept up in like the kind of how the crowd is going, and it's just this momentum. It's
Mm.
pretty
Yeah.
insane how like people can get. I mean, like they even. I mean, there's been like a lot of experiments and stuff done on it too. It's just like, but yeah, people get really swept up in this kind of,
Oh,
like you're told you're with this group and everybody's doing something and you just start doing it too. Like you don't want to feel left out or you don't want to feel different or you don't want them to turn on you or like a lot of different things could, especially when these people are so aggressive. I would almost feel like I would be like concerned somebody would just start flipping out on me like for not
Mm.
like acting like they are.
Participating, yeah.
Hey, Eric.
What's up, Eric? We have summoned the anarchists by talking about cops. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I guess if that's the subject I just wandered my way into, I guess
we
that's
were, no,
before
yeah,
I
we were.
forget, happy birthday, Josh.
Yeah,
Before I
thanks.
forget.
Michael's tomorrow too.
Oh, happy birthday, guys.
Oh,
So,
really?
but yeah, Ben came on, so we were kind of talking about some of the Paris stuff, and then we just got into like kind of riots and police brutality stuff in general, and like how kind of both sides get completely insane sometimes.
Oh, you mean there's good people on both sides?
No, I'm saying both sides take it way too far.
There's fine people on both sides.
Yeah,
There's
fun
shitty people on both sides. Is my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah,
You know,
mostly shitty people.
to be perfectly honest, that's if Trump had said that, nobody would have argued,
Oh yeah,
right?
I think that's the better argument. Is hey, there's shitty people everywhere. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
The joke's still funny though. That like, yeah, I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous. And I think you guys, at this point, you guys know enough to know that, like, that's my take on everything. It's like, it's all just kind of goofy and ridiculous. Like, it's all just kind of goofy and ridiculous. So.
Yeah, we were also beforehand, if you guys don't mind me, like, kind of switching topics real quick. Like, Eric, before you got here, me and Michael, and then Ben kind of went on it too. We were talking about, like, TV shows. When you start watching a TV show, you kind of get really into it. And then it gets canceled, it gets cut off or something, and you're, like, left on a cliffhanger or something, and you, like, oh, God, he just dropped out, didn't he?
I guess so.
didn't want
Oh
to
yeah,
hear
Liberty probably was. That's
Yeah,
typically when he stops for a second. It's usually.
Oh, here we go.
Sorry about that. My phone just my Ross Ulbricht 9:00 alarm just went off.
Oh.
And it, like freaked my phone out.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, because I know sometimes Liberty like pops up.
Oh yeah, no. She's upstairs
sleeping?
with mom. No, she's upstairs
okay.
with mom. So I'm free for the day.
Nice. All right. Well, so like
you
I don't
were
know
saying something about TV shows and then
yeah, like if you start getting invested in a TV show and then it just kind of gets canceled.
Getting canceled is the
Where
okay,
like
here's
you don't
the
get
question.
a good resolution.
Here's the question: which is worse, a good season of a TV show that you didn't realize gets canceled and you watch the whole season, or like 8 seasons of a show and the last season completely and totally shits the bed.
Are you talking about Game of Thrones?
Of course.
I actually brought that up. Yeah,
which is worse? And my answer is, I'd rather have one amazing season and a cliffhanger and never know what happens than 4 good seasons, a couple of okay seasons, and one just dive bomb suicide of a season that's just garbage.
You know what? I kind of agree, and I was actually going to bring this up earlier, but I'll bring it up now. A Clockwork Orange the movie versus a Clockwork Orange the book. I saw the movie first, and anyone who's seen it kind of ends with Alexander. Oh, I was cured all right, and it just kind of leaves it open from there. In the book, close your ears if you don't want a spoiler of that book that's been out for 45 years. He meets up with an old droog at the bar, and he convinces him to turn his life around, and he ends up like getting married and having kids. So like it has like kind of like that shitty ending where it's like he ends up like, I mean, I guess it's a nice little ending, but
so
it's kind of disappointing.
You're saying in this case the movie was actually better than the book?
Yeah, because it left it open. So that's why I'm agreeing with you, because I'd much rather the open ending where it's like, you don't really know what happens, so like, oh well, that's just kind of boring.
There's things like The Mist, where like even Stephen King himself like admitted that the movie ending was better than what he wrote, and he would have written that if he had thought of it first. Like there's actually a lot of like parts where movies do get like specific parts better, they can improve on it. But the whole like book versus movie, it's just typically you have to cut out a lot of exposition and a lot of character development because you just don't have the time.
Yeah, as far as Game of Thrones is concerned, like that's my basic intention is they bit off more than they could chew by trying to stay too true to the books early on.
Mm-hmm.
And they got 5 seasons into it and realized, oh shit, we're gonna have to cut a lot of stuff, or we're never gonna. The show's gonna go for 15 seasons if we don't like start cutting quick, and we're gonna lose people. And so, I saw something from George R.R. Martin recently where he's talking about like, when you start making those cuts, a lot of the groundwork that you laid early on ends up dead-ended and just kind of. And so you end up with and Game of Thrones is a great example of like what not to do, in that the source material is so gigantic that like thinking you could bite that off in the same number of seasons as books is crazy.
Yeah.
Like it was just madness where it's like, oh, it's a 1,000-page book. And yeah, there's a lot of extraneous detail and stuff that you don't necessarily need in the TV show, but there's a lot of, I mean, Game of Thrones may be one of the most complicated series of books ever written as far as scale and number of kind of primary story arcs within one set of books, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking.
Well, I haven't actually read or seen any of it, but
yeah, that's fine.
I've heard a lot about it. Yeah,
but like Dragonlance, right, is a gigantic series now. There's a dozen authors, and that's super complicated. But each set of story arcs is usually like a book or a trilogy, whereas Game of Thrones is ostensibly going to be 7 books when it's finished. It might end up being 8. And it's all one gigantic story arc with all of these ancillary.
Oh.
You muted yourself.
You might have accidentally. Because that happened, I think, the last time he
probably dropped his camera or something.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, I mean, until he gets back from the comments, because he was talking about like it sucks when you have like a really good season and then you have a really shitty season. The movie equivalent of that from the chat was The Matrix, where he had like a really amazing movie, and then the next 2 like kind of had declining quality, where it was just like
no. I mean, yeah,
I hate.
Yes.
Okay, like here's the thing, though. Like you can argue that 2 and 3 were good, But you can't argue like against that. Like they could not recapture the same like lightning in a bottle that they had with the first movie. Like that was
know what it was. I think it's like people view it as an action movie, and then other people view it as a plot movie. I view it as a plot movie. And,
yeah, no, I always saw it as more of a like a sci-fi with some like a sci-fi movie with some like sprinkling of like really good action scenes. But I think the problem is that like the first movie fit that more, but as they went along, they've got more kind of crazy with like really trying to up the ante in each one, and I don't feel like they needed to do that. They should have like kept it like a good structure, and they try to get more crazy and like pack in more ideas and more like
right.
Like
I mean they did, but it's like it was all like hidden to get to the end of the thing, and it did kind of leave it open ended, but it left it with a big enough ending where it's like he defeated Smith, and it's like you have all these theories that can go into it, like how it really ended and what really happened with it. But it's like as an action movie, it declined in quality because like it just became repetitive.
Oh yeah,
but when it came to like the actual plot lines, like the architect and like all the different like like things that they put into it.
Yeah, no, there was.
I
just feel that execution wasn't as great, but like I could rewatch Matrix, like the first Matrix movie, like multiple times, and like still like every time like really enjoy it. I could not do the same with the sequels because like it kind of falls into some of the trappings and I'm not saying it's on the same level, but it falls into some of the trappings that the prequel Star Wars movies did, where like they like were like we can do all this stuff, so we should, and it's like no, like kind of rein it in a little bit. You don't need like a 20-minute lightsaber battle. Nobody wants that. Like you don't need to make your story seem more complex than it is. Just kind of do like what the original thing that everybody loved was. Like give us more of that. But I mean, like you don't need to.
All right. Question: pod races, ranked from 1 to 10. How cool were the pod races from 1 to 10?
Okay, I'll say I was in high school when I first saw it, so I'm going to give it 2 ratings here. When I first saw it as a teenager, who was kind of like just excited to see a new Star Wars movie, pod races were probably like an 8. When I rewatch it, like a 4. I'm like not as excited. Here's the thing, though. I will say, my daughter, she's 8 now, but like when I first had her watch the Star Wars and like Empire and Jedi, she and I got pictures of her like watching Star Wars. Like she was just like so entranced with the screen. She loved Star Wars. And she was like 4 when she first saw that. And she just like was so into it. She thought it was so cool. So like we watched that and I was like, okay, we should watch the prequels now, and then she's like 6 at this time. And we're watching the prequels and she's just kind of like the whole time. And then it's just one point she's like, this is so boring. Like, I'm like, yeah, you're not the only one that thinks that, hon. I'm sorry. Like, it's just so much talking, and even the action scenes, like these cool, awesome action set pieces, she found incredibly boring because it just got so repetitive. Like the lightsaber. Go ahead.
No, it was with that Star Wars series. It had Jar Jar Binks, and that ruined everything.
Yeah, the most hated character ever.
Yeah, Jar Jar Binks is like just the worst character anyone has ever come up with.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the thing, is just like George Lucas got just so like, and here's the problem too, like with the prequels is like the original Star Wars movie, like he had so many people saying you can't do that, that's a stupid idea, don't doing that. He didn't even direct the next 2. And in the prequels, he surrounded himself by a bunch of yes men who were too scared to challenge him on anything. So he got to make 3 movies exactly the way he wanted it. And then suddenly everybody's really realizing like, oh, he's really not that good of a storyteller, that good of a movie maker. Like stuff he's done after then, like Strange Magic, that like Red Wings or whatever, like that one, like I think it was like a World War II movie, like just like stuff he's done since then has been pretty bad too. And it's like he's a good idea man, but like he needs somebody to really like tell him when his ideas are getting a little too stupid. Like
well, it was also a case of the original trilogy having technical limitations too. There were things
Yeah,
you couldn't do. Right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
I'm old enough to remember like the original trilogy before it was the special effects edition, and like
Yep, same here.
all of the outrage of like everybody going, why are you adding weird like lizards in different places, and why are you adding all this extra stuff?
Someone
And
thought that made
honestly,
no sense.
the special effects, like the special edition of the original trilogy, isn't all that bad. Really, all they did was add some like cool creatures, and there's a like extended scene with Han and Jabba, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
And, like,
the nice thing about that is that's actually something that was filmed.
yeah, so there was some cool bits that they added back in that like didn't work originally because it didn't look as good, and they could clean it up, like the Jabba scene. But
Yeah,
then
and they
also
had
like
to change
they
it
added like
it was a
Stormtrooper on Dewback on Tatooine.
yeah. A
It's
lot
like,
of changes
okay,
were
cool.
unnecessary.
That's unnecessary but interesting, at least.
Yeah.
Like it was all
They had
unnecessary.
Han Solo step on Jabba's tail.
Right.
Well, though there was a reason they did that too. Actually,
Yeah,
because originally it was a human, and he walked behind him, and I was like, "Oh, Jabba's a giant slug now." So they had to like.
Yeah.
Whoops.
That was-
but it actually kind of made it worse because like you step on like this giant mob boss's tail, and it
And
like
he just kind of
shakes it off
faces.
like nothing happened.
Yeah.
I did kind of like that though. It was in a way that like Jabba and Han had this relationship where like Han was kind of a like I don't give a fuck attitude, and Jabba was like respected Han to the point that he would let him go away with that level of disrespect up to a point like he was more concerned with his money than like Han stepping on his tail.
Yeah. But he didn't even flinch about it. Like he just made it. Ooh, ah.
Yeah, I know. which almost makes me think that that's probably not the first time Han had done that.
Or that somebody
Like,
else had just kind of carelessly stepped on it.
It's just like fuck it, whatever.
I don't know, man.
Like, I forgot you were one of those things.
Yeah.
I've all but given up on Star Wars, but I was a super like gigantic Star Wars nerd when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And one of the things is like at one point I had more than $3,000 worth of Star Wars books. And if you've read the books, like the old canon is so much better than everything. That, like,
I haven't read very many. I've only like really sat down and read one of the books. I've read a lot of the comics and stuff, but I've looked into a lot of the expanded universe lore, and it's so disappointing that they they just threw it all away.
Well, you know what happened with that is Disney didn't get the publishing rights.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I thought they just didn't like want to mess with it, or
Lucasfilm didn't own all of the. Lucasfilm didn't own all the rights to sell them to Disney. Like all the different publishers had. It would have been too crazy, so they just said, "Screw it, we'll buy what Lucas owns. We'll buy Lucasfilm and their ownership rights and tell new stories."
Yeah,
because you're talking, 5 or 6 different major publishing houses and several dozen authors over the course of more than 100, and I think like almost 150 books now.
Yeah,
like there was no way to purchase all of the rights to all that stuff. Now there's some of that stuff where like Lucasfilm had the rights to certain characters or certain particular story arcs or whatever, and Disney got some of that. And so you're seeing some of that stuff, like the independent solo film, like because they own Han Solo directly, they can tell some of his origination story on Corellia, although they had to modify it a bit from the books.
Yeah,
it's pretty close. They had to dump some of the like major characters that Lucasfilm didn't own directly, but the general concept is there.
Yeah.
And so
I have a question because you guys are massive Star Wars men. Absolutely adore. How do you guys feel about the upcoming 6 new Star Wars films that will be coming out?
Well, I will say this: Star Wars 9. I have absolutely no interest in seeing that after Star Wars 8. And then I have basically just lost interest in whatever else they're coming up with because I'm like, like a lot of it is just like I'm just.
No, isn't it?
So
like, they can win my love back, but I'm not like it's not dead to me. But I'm like the last like Star Wars 8 Solo, and I'm just kind of like I don't really care like anymore. Like Star Wars 8, I just hated. Solo, I was just indifferent to, and I'm just like I don't know. If I'm going to spend money on a movie ticket, I want to make sure I'm going to be entertained.
My general opinion is Rogue One was amazing.
Yeah, I love Rogue One.
Force Awakens was best as anybody could hope for.
It worked as like kind of a reimagining reboot kind of thing.
And right,
Yeah.
you have to like tie in some old characters, get the reboot back.
Mhm.
It's been 15 years since the last movie or whatever. Like and it's been 30 some odd years since the original cast was in the movies. So let's kind of reintroduce everybody, get everybody back up to speed. 8 was a steaming pile of dog shit.
Yeah.
And I have 9. I will see just because I glutton for punishment. But I'm super interested in this the Mandalorian TV show for the Disney streaming platform.
I'm intrigued.
I'm super interested because
yeah.
the premise is it follows a Mandalorian bounty hunter, I think, during the rebellion, but not Boba Fett. So super interesting to me. I like the Mandalorian story arc on Clone Wars and Rebels to some extent. That's an interesting backstory there, and Disney owns all of that.
Yeah.
So they'll have full rights to kind of keep to that original canon stuff. So I'm super interested in live action Star Wars TV and to see how that kind of works out. Kind of serialized. I doubt it'll be TV. It'll be serialized storytelling. Yeah. But more along the lines of, say, Game of Thrones or anything HBO's done over the last 10 or 12 years, where it's a full hour, no commercials, and it's more like a individual movie every so often. And then with the announcements of, I know they're doing another solo, they're doing a follow-up solo movie with the same kind of cast of characters from the last one. And that was pretty good.
If I'm wrong, Solo wasn't, great in ratings, but it did make a decent amount of money, didn't it?
It made a reasonable amount of money, and I thought it was a good movie, and the acting was solid.
I didn't think it was a terrible movie. I just felt indifferent.
The other interesting part, I don't know, did you see it?
Solo?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little indifferent to it.
I didn't want to spoil it, but they're bringing back Darth Maul and stuff, and they own that, so that could be interesting.
Yeah,
and
I think there's plenty of good building blocks. I think hopefully if they don't have as many production problems, maybe they'll be able to.
So part of my understanding of what happened was when J.J. Abrams backed out of directing 8, Rian Johnson came in and just kind of scrapped the whole fucking thing and just ruined everything that was going. He took it all and we're gonna do it my way now, and
he threw so much potential, amazing storylines on the trash.
Just trashed. So, I'm not super. I'm not super hopeful about 9, but I felt the same way about Episode 3. By the time Episode 3 rolled around, I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it after it came out. And so, put that in perspective, I, at 11 years old, managed to convince my parents to camp out for tickets for Episode 1, and then camp out again to see the midnight first showing, 6 weeks later. So, I went from, less than 6 years, I went from being a uber nerd to being I'm out. So,
that's what it takes.
And some of that's come back a little bit of I still find it super fascinating, and I've seen all the Marvel stuff, even though some of them are worse than others. And I could just I like all of that, and I'm much like the Marvel movies. I am fascinated by the ability to maintain a storyline of that scope.
Yeah,
it's impressive.
And some of it where you're looking at it going okay. Especially with Marvel, you go, okay, so it's 23 movies now over 10 years, all leading up to the last movie. Everything all kind of ties together. You've got a bunch of independent solo films and a bunch of crossover stuff and a bunch of big ensemble, and they've managed to kind of keep it all on course and on schedule and tell the story they wanted to tell, and successfully bringing new characters as the rights have been returned to Marvel from different places as Disney's bought up, Fox and bought rights back from Sony and different things. And so I'm wildly amazed at Kevin Feige's ability to keep all of that kind of to go 15 years ago, I was president of Marvel Entertainment. We were basically bankrupt. I had this vision
I mean,
managed to sell it to Disney. I managed to sell it to Bob Iger that I had this gigantic vision for this thing that would completely take Marvel from basically bankruptcy to being one of the most valuable brands on the planet in less than 15 years.
yeah, I actually made a post. It's about I want to say it was 30, 40 years ago now. Like there was a point in time, it was, I'll think it was about a little over 20 years ago, maybe. Marvel actually flat out filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Like they filed for bankruptcy. The whole reason, and people don't really know, like why do all these different, like why does Fox and Sony and Universal and all these
They
different
sold off all their rights out
they
of
sold off
bankruptcy.
their rights.
Yeah.
That's the only way they could dig themselves out of bankruptcy. Like several things, and actually I was saying it in the chat, like when Marvel Comics was able to get the rights to publish, like they very first started publishing the first Star Wars comics, like after Star Wars came out, that helped them, like kind of saved them for a little while. Like Marvel's like just kind of barely kept their head above the water for a long while. And they went from, like, this is one of those, like, it's like an amazing success story, is they went from like actually having to file for bankruptcy to making like a couple movies so profitable that it made Disney want to purchase them, to being able to actually buy out a company that they had sold their licenses to making what is currently the second highest grossing movie of all time before inflation, which I would actually be really surprised if it doesn't pass Avatar.
It will. It's on 2.5 already.
It passed. It became the second highest grossing movie of all time in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
We're talking like Avatar made Titanic. That was their entire run, and that movie was in theaters forever.
Yeah, but the tickets were also like $4.
And people saw it 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 times.
Yeah.
The other thing about Titanic is like that had such a cultural impact that like people, it was a ridiculous movie, but whatever.
And you really think about it, Titanic was a drama. Like it wasn't like some big spectacle that
Popcorn
you see at
blockbuster action flick. Yep.
Actually,
right, exactly.
Titanic was originally kind of supposed to, like meant to be marketed more as kind of an action thriller type movie. It was the whole what's that fucking lady's name that did the song at the end?
Cher.
No, it wasn't Cher.
Celine Dion.
Who?
Celine Dion?
Celine Dion, yes. She did that song at the end, and like, because if you look at the earlier marketing,
wait, you mean they're not the same people?
Yeah, if you look at the earlier marketing, like all the posters and stuff, like they were like these like it was like
it was about the sinking of the ship.
Yeah, it was like
not the
metal with
emotional
rivets
impact of
and
the
stuff,
relationship.
and then that song like took off, and then all the marketing was like this love story kind of thing, and that's how like they swapped the marketing. I actually think that's what kind of made the movie become so popular, honestly, but was like them kind of swapping marketing tactics. Like that wasn't supposed to be the intent of the movie. It's actually interesting though, if you watch the Mr. Plinkett review of Titanic, he does this thing because like he talks about how like James Cameron, like it was largely based off the book A Night to Remember. And then he talks about all these other old movies that have been based off the same book, and that most of the Titanic stories we know are like from accounts and journals and this and that. So like you kind of, if you ever actually watch other Titanic movies, you'd be amazed at how identical they all are. Because he takes things like it's line for line from like these old black and white movies to Titanic, and he like matches them up, and like so many scenes, shots, lines are like the exact same thing, beat for beat. Like James Cameron's Titanic is basically more of a remake than anything. Like it's kind of like, I'm like, I don't want to say I think he's more inspired by it, but like it's kind of like when you only have like so much source material to go through, like and it's been done to death before, it's impossible to make something completely original. Like
Cameron's also the guy that has done the highest grossing movie thing twice, and the other version of that was he retold Pocahontas.
Yeah.
So
no, there was there was another Dancing with Wolves. Was that the one?
Oh,
really made
it's all this. That's the same story arc.
Yeah. I think that was one I remember people talking about the most, though.
Part of that though is like you know, if you follow kind of the Joseph Campbell school of thought, there's only 6 stories. So
yeah. No, it's hard, but like that's the thing though. Is like Titanic, like you can't really make it. There was actually a made-for-TV movie that had almost like identically the same plot, and I think it came out like around the same time or slightly before the movie came out. Like it was crazy how similar their plot was. Like,
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it's always the same plot.
yeah,
yeah,
Hu-
it's
Hunter
it's
gonna
just a
Dunker,
boat that sinks.
Homer
It's
Simpson.
really hard to be original with.
Yeah.
it. And like if you're trying to do historical fiction, all of your historical sources are limited. So you're going to pull characters and quotes and stuff from those sources that everybody else has already done before. So like the point isn't that he was like necessarily ripping off these old movies. It's more that you can't make it original. It's impossible unless you just completely pull away from the source material as much as possible. And then you end up with Titanic 2. Which I don't know.
I didn't even know that existed.
Oh no, it exists. It's what was that? What's that? Asylum that makes like all those like
I mean,
obvious.
how is there a second movie? There was only one ship and it already sank.
Yeah. Well, not like Asylum. They do that thing where like you know like Iron Man comes out, so then they come out with a movie like really quickly. They rush production and it'll be like Metal Man, or then they're like Transformers comes out, so they do Transmorphers, and they do. It's the same company that made Sharknado. Like that was like its first like hit that wasn't like an obvious ripoff, but.
Hey, say what you will about Sharknado, it actually made it onto the Senate floor.
Yeah, no, but like I mean, like that was actually like a shift in how they started making movies for them. But before that, their whole marketing strategy was basically to like confuse like old ladies into buying like the wrong movie for their grandkids.
Mm.
You know, it was to make a cover and a name that was so similar to the movie that just came out to, you know, confuse these people and be like, oh, I'll buy this for this guy. And like, it's not the right movie. And their movies are always like, those movies are always really atrocious. And yeah.
They're fun to watch.
Yeah. I believe it's Asylum that made Titanic 2. And I don't quite remember. I think there was like another Titanic or something. Like, I don't quite remember the entire, like what it was supposed to be about. But yeah, there was an actual Titanic 2.
Yeah.
I remember reading recently that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Disney owns 7 of the top 10 highest grossing films of all time.
Not surprised.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Well, I
Pretty
mean,
crazy.
also, how many of those 7 are Marvel right now, too? And Marvel or Star Wars.
5 of them, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I know The Force Awakens is like 4th or 5th.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, I mean, like a couple Marvel movies are like, a few are like really high up there. I know Infinity War was like pretty high up. I mean, like once even just for inflation, like a lot of those drop down pretty quick. Like I think Gone with the Wind is still like once
Number
just
one,
for
yeah.
inflation, the highest grossing movie, and I don't think that'll ever be surpassed.
Yeah.
But
how many of those movies they're gonna talk about in 5 years, except for when they're talking about you know, ratings and, you know, box office money?
oh yeah, no. I think Endgame is something that'll be talked about for a long time to come because it was this closing of this like 11-year like epic.
I think it's the MCU that'll be talked about, and not so much the individual movies.
No, and I think that's why Endgame specifically will be because it was the close to this huge like story, like this giant story arc that took 11 years to tell.
Yeah.
So Iron Man, the first Iron Man is likely to be talked about too. Then.
Yeah, Iron Man and
Because
Endgame. I was gonna say those are the.
Yeah.
Two
Well, what about like Ant-Man and what are the other like ones that like no one really cared about?
Not much is gonna be like. Iron Man, Infinity War, and Endgame will be talked about for a long time because of just the impact it had. Like the MCU thing, like that's a marketing thing. Like that's a plan that so many other studios have been trying to copy and failed miserably at. Universal tried to do that with their Dark Universe thing, and they couldn't even get past the first fucking movie twice. They failed twice on their first movie. DC's been trying it and really having a difficult time because they were trying to rush it. The only other company that hasn't like floundered too much is Legendary with their MonsterVerse. Like Godzilla 2014 did pretty well. Kong did good enough. I think the one that comes out later this month is going to do pretty good. I mean, for like a giant monster movie, I don't think it's going to break records. Yeah, but I mean, like, I'm excited to see it. It looks amazing. And then I think Godzilla versus King Kong next year is going to do pretty well too. And that's when their license runs out. So I don't know if the MonsterVerse ends there or if Toho will like re-up, because I know like Toho like a couple years ago did a new Godzilla movie, but they
The
can't.
one with Bryan Cranston.
No. Like this was a Toho, like the Japanese one.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I saw this one in theaters. It was really good actually. And that was like their first Godzilla movie they had done in like 10 years. But they can't do like a sequel or do any more Japanese Godzilla movies until after 2020, because like there's like that's part of the license agreement they have with Legendary, with the Bryan Cranston Godzilla one, the Kong one they did, and the one that comes out this month, and the one comes out next year. They have to wait until that license runs up. So like it's this thing of like people don't know if they will Legendary will be able to re-up that license and get licenses for more monsters to continue their MonsterVerse, or if Toho will say no and want to focus on theirs, or if they'll work out some deal where they can have like a coexisting. Because like part of the whole thing is that they can't, like the movies can't compete with each other. Like they can't be released in the same year, kind of thing. It's really weird. But like the American ones get released in Japan, so like they don't.
that would be better. You get people to do 2 shows at one time to just go see both of them.
Or part of it though, I think too, is though like it's confusion. Like they did the 1998, like the Matthew Broderick, like really crappy Godzilla movie, and then Japan a year later did like re-upped and rebooted their Godzilla franchise, and then it came out a year later after that as Godzilla 2000, and it was that was like before the one that recently came out from Japan. Like that was the first Godzilla movie that had a theatrical run here since like 1985 and 2000. But too many, like, like the average moviegoer is kind of really dumb, and like everybody just assumed it was a sequel to the American 1998 one. So it did really bad because people were like, this doesn't have anything to do with that. I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But like 2000 was actually a really good Godzilla movie. It was way better than the one that we made. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's part of the whole deal, is that there's not that confusion, and like this, it can't impact each other's like box offices because people won't go to one movie, think they're going to another. And I don't know. It's this whole weird thing. So like after 2020, I have no idea what's going to happen with Godzilla. And I love Godzilla, so I'm hoping, like, I don't even care if it's Japan or if it's America. Like, I hope one way or another it keeps going.
So, since we're talking about the end of the monster movies, possibly,
Yeah.
what about an end to the superhero movies? Do you think superhero movies are just kind of on their way out now?
Nope.
Or do you think they're going to keep going?
Marvel's got another 15 movies already slated through 2027.
Yeah, yeah, they're supposed to be announcing like Phase 4 soon.
They've announced the titles for everything.
Oh, really? Because I know there's like a fan one. I haven't seen the real one yet. I've been off the internet for a while though. So
I don't know if it was official, but I've seen it's like I saw something that was pretty official looking.
Yeah, there was a fan one that looked very official looking, but like it was a fan one, because there was one that was like Ant-Man versus Masters of Evil, and I was like, there is no way Marvel would make that movie. That would be a really dumb move. And that's when I was like, oh, it's a fan made thing. So, but I haven't looked. I know they said they were supposed to really soon be announcing the official Phase 4.
And I know Disney did announce they're like slating through 2025 or something like that.
Oh yeah,
there was 2 Marvel movies a year.
Yeah, they got a
more untitled Marvel movies, but they're there.
They have a few already. Like, I mean, Spider-Man's already. Actually, I think Spider-Man's technically part of Phase 3.
Yeah, because it comes out next month.
Yeah, so like, but I know they've already talked, like they're gonna do Doctor Strange 2, Black Panther 2, Guardians 3 has already been announced. Unfortunately, Captain Marvel 2, and maybe we'll get a better
movie. Wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad.
I can't stand Brie Larson. She's a. I'll not use the word I want to use.
She's a cunt. It's okay.
I was going to use the T word actually. She's an insufferable T word. But anyway, in real life, but the movie was fine. Like there wasn't anything wrong with it.
It wasn't terrible. Like it wasn't near as bad as what everybody said.
Yeah.
But it was subpar for Marvel. Like it was just kind of like, I was like, oh, I think the reason I enjoyed it as much as I did was just because like my expectations were super low.
My expectations
Everybody was
were
bashing it.
0, and the '90s nostalgia was kind of fun.
Yeah, that was fun. I feel like there were some stupid decisions made. Like there was some really cool decisions made. I think it was the best Stan Lee cameo we've had like ever. It was an awesome.
I don't know, him cutting Thor's hair in Ragnarok is pretty amazing.
That's pretty funny. But I loved Mallrats when I was like a teen. Like that was one of my favorite comedies ever, and like it was just really goofy for me. I loved it. So like this kind of callback to that I thought was really cool. But I don't know. There's just, and I guess like overall, like I feel like there were some like iffy decisions they made for like, because I'm like. I don't know, like a lot of the changes they make from the comic books, I'm pretty tolerant of because I'm like, well, they have to change things. But there was some weird stuff, and I was thinking more of like, okay, well, how are they going to do this in the future? Because everybody's trying to guess what's going to be their future big threat beyond Thanos, and some people are saying like, well, it could be Secret Invasion, where the Skrulls are coming to invade. I'm like, that'd be really weird to do after how they handled Captain Marvel. But then like there's also like Secret War, there's like a million like giant like annihilists, like a million like really big ass giant cosmic threats they could do. But yeah, I don't know. Like there was just stuff in the movie where I was just like, I don't know about that. Like I don't know. It kind of is one of those things too where like a lot of people have had this opinion, and I actually agree with it. I don't think Marvel should do solo movies anymore. It doesn't really make any sense to. Like when they do solo movies, they should be more like the way Winter Soldier or Civil War was, where.
Well, so see, I don't see Civil War as a solo movie.
Exactly.
It's an ensemble.
It's exactly.
Like yeah, it's a Captain America title, but it wasn't. It was Captain America and Black Panther and Iron Man, and like that's not.
Well, like and like the way
not
like
a solo.
Exactly. And
Iron Man,
like it
Iron Man
can
was
continue
a solo.
like a storyline.
Solo.
Yes. Yeah.
Captain America: The First Avenger is a solo, right?
But like
Captain
Winter Soldier isn't a solo because you got so much of Black Widow in there, and they're like bringing back Bucky, and like it expands upon the universe, but it also focuses on one character, much in the way Thor Ragnarok did. It helped, like it brought in Hulk, it introduced Valkyrie, had Loki again. Like it was a story focused on one character, but it was part of the whole universe. It made you feel like took place in that universe. It didn't feel so cut off. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but bringing in like Nick Fury just didn't have the same impact that Black Widow and Winter Soldier. Or
interestingly, the introduction of Coulson was better in Marvel than Nick Fury's introduction was.
Yeah,
and Coulson gets like this much screen time, but his introduction is hilarious because he's like bumbling rookie, and like we already know, like he turns into badass and then dies in the line of duty. Like so, there's this backstory that you get with Coulson that makes him being a bumbling rookie agent in the 90s hilarious.
Yeah,
and then he gets copied by the whole thing's hysterical. Whereas like Fury, it's kind of just Fury already. Like they didn't go back far enough to make it interesting.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's
like he's a kind of a less savvy, less up to speed, but still completely Nick Fury.
Yeah, I mean, it's not him being Nick Fury. It's just he's Samuel L. Jackson. You can't really take Samuel L. Jackson and make him seem kind of like a rookie kind of person.
You also can't go back that far because he's old enough that getting him to play much younger than that's hard. Yeah, I get that.
And I'm like, I don't have anything wrong. I don't have any issue with them, like the way they went back to the 90s. I'm like, okay, because everybody's like, well, why didn't she show up during this? Why didn't she show up during that? And I'm like, why didn't Nick Fury call her then and here? And I'm like, well, Nick Fury seems like he kind of created the Avengers, so he didn't have to call her. And then like, why would he call? Like the only time he decided to call her,
very clearly tell him like, hey, I gotta go make sure the Kree have a like safe homeworld, and like I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, only call me in extreme emergencies.
Yeah, and the only time he calls her is when he's like people are disappearing, and he's like, okay, like, and he knows he's about disappearing. Like it was like, like he's not going to be there to do anything. He's not going to be there to assist. Like he needs to bring her in. But I think the whole idea was like he was trying to like, and like I think she even says something in like Endgame where it was like, they're like, well, why weren't you here for this? And she's like, well, there are a lot of other planets out there, and those planets don't have you, like, and I think that was Fury's intent. So like her not coming for all those other things makes complete sense to me. Like, that's not a problem I have. It's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know what direction they will go with their Captain Marvel 2. Like, I wouldn't actually.
I'm also curious on that whole count if she doesn't end up getting recast, because like there's all this talk of like the co-stars and stuff don't like her.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's an intolerable pain in the ass to work with, and so like,
yeah,
she's just annoying. Did you see that interview with
Chris Hemsworth and her? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, even with Don Cheadle, like she was doing she was like messing with him, and like he got pissed. He was like he told his arm away. He was like, I told you about not touching me. Like he says under his breath, but you can hear it. Like he was so annoyed, and it just sounds like just nobody likes her. But like just every time you see her, she always like everything anybody says, she thinks she's under attack in some way. She thinks anything.
She's always on the defensive, yeah.
Anything that somebody says that's not praise is like some kind of attack or like.
There's nothing worse than the entitled rich white liberal.
Oh yeah.
Like,
and that's
she's
just insufferable. Yeah. And I'm like that's the thing too, is like Marvel is more about dollars, or like Disney, I'll say, is more about dollar signs. So like I think the moment
they're happy to play. They're
happy to play like
it's SJW stuff and girl badassery and whatever else. They're happy to play that game because it sells. But if you become unpopular as a person, as an act, like, I mean, what's his name? Terrence Howard got recast because he was a pain in the ass.
Like, like if they do Captain Marvel 2, and she's so insufferable that people don't go see the movie, and the reason people don't go see the movie is because of Brie Larson,
they'll either drop it or they'll recast. And that's not a hard thing to do because there was a different Captain Marvel, right? Carol Danvers wasn't the original.
In her movie, and people don't realize this, in her movie, they showed the other Captain Marvel. One of the other They actually showed both other Captain Marvels. The Kree lady, which is
Marvel. Yeah.
Originally was a guy, but the like her friend, the black lady, I don't think it's her, but I think it might have been her daughter is
the
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel. She's the current Captain Marvel in the comics.
No. She was like back in the day. The current Captain Marvel, unless I'm really out, was Carol Danvers. There's a Miss Marvel, a new one that's somebody different. But there was like a black Captain Marvel for a while. This was like during like the Secret Wars and stuff.
Yeah,
and
it's not like
she had these different kind of powers. And when Carol Danvers decides to like take on the Captain Marvel name, she actually goes to like get her permission from her, like that lady. Like they're good friends in the comics, and but like
it's not like Marvel's beyond doing that. Just kind of like Falcon taking Cap's shield at the end of Endgame, and like he's gonna put on the Captain America, which is like the current Captain America is already doing that. Like there's been a female Thor, and there's Beta Ray Bill was Thor for a while, and like. Marvel's not beyond like, hey, we're gonna put somebody else as kind of a like, oh, so and so died on like like Superman dies and then eventually survives. Thor dies, so Beta Ray Bill is gonna pick up Mjolnir and like wield it and whatever. But then Thor wasn't really dead, so now he's back. Like, and I saw some interview recently with like the Russo brothers saying like suggesting things along that line with Iron Man that like at some point. There's maybe some way to bring back, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark.
Interested if they did him as like an AI, the way Jarvis used to be. But here's the only thing, though.
Or a clone. Like, they cloned Coulson.
Yeah.
For
basically, yeah.
For S.H.I.E.L.D., the TV show, he was a clone.
There's just all this like. I don't know.
The fun thing about Marvel is it's magic and science and like just bullshit science.
No, you pretty much can do whatever. Like that's the beautiful thing about comic book logic is you can do whatever you want. You can bring people back to life, or you can. It doesn't matter. Like
it's
you can
not
do
quite that.
things.
Like it's Marvel that's that way. Like DC's not that messed up. Like the DC universe has an internal
no. What the DC universe does is just resets every now and then.
they retcon.
But no, okay, like DC does
retcons.
Ridiculous.
Marvel goes, oh well, this is Earth 616 instead of Earth 649, or like whatever.
That was the nice thing. Like the Ultimate series was actually like a cool way of like having a good starting point. But like DC does do some insane things. Like when Superboy Prime like punches reality and it makes Jason Todd come back to life. Like I remember I was having this conversation with somebody about that, and I said something about that, and like my wife is standing next to me. She's like, "What?" Like, yeah, Superboy Prime punches reality, and it makes Jason Todd come back to life, and that's why he becomes Red Hood in the comics. And she's like, "How do you punch reality?" I'm like, "It's a comic book."
How does Superman fly around the world so fast it turns back time? I don't know.
It makes no sense though. Like when you hear that he punches reality itself, and like it made all these changes. Like, but I mean, like that's actually something I think like Marvel sort of did it. They did their like soft reset recently, and I checked out in Marvel books. Like they made a lot of stupid decisions, and I got sick of it because they kept pandering to people that don't even buy comic books, and then they wonder why their comic book sales are in the toilet. I'm like, yeah, probably why. Yeah, I don't know. Like,
welcome to the modern world. A bunch of stuff that was catered to a specific audience is either going to adapt or die. Like, that's just the reality of the way our culture is moved. Like, it's already moved that way. Like, the doors are open, and our client base is 10 to 18-year-old white males is no longer an acceptable justification for only catering to those clients.
Yeah, no, it's just it's insane how all that goes. But I am interested. Okay, like I will say, I have like absolutely no interest in seeing the Dark Phoenix movie because Apocalypse was so bad, and they've heard about all the problems they've had with Dark Phoenix. Like they've had to like reshoot most of the movie, and it just got like I'm just like I don't know. I don't care that much for like a lot of the young. The only reason I want to see it is because I've heard that what's her face that plays Mystique like dies in like the first like 20 minutes, and I'm like, oh, I'd love to see her killed off because I can't stand her. Jennifer something. What's her name? Jennifer Lawrence. Oh, she just annoys the shit out of me. Like not as a person because I really don't even know who she is as a person. But like
her acting's pretty rough.
It's awful. Like, I don't understand why people are so obsessed with her. When I saw her in like the first Glass movie, everybody's like, "Oh, she was so good." And I was like, "She was the worst part of the movie." And then
she nailed Hunger Games because, like, if you've read Hunger Games, Katniss's character is super one-dimensional because she's like
good in that.
Ultra traumatized, basically, and so she's super one-dimensional. And then Jennifer Lawrence nails that and plays pretty one-dimensional. And then you realize, well, she's really only got that one dimension. So playing other things is like, woof. The only other thing I've ever seen her in where it was like, okay, that was pretty decent, was Silver Linings Playbook. And she wasn't the, like, driving factor of that movie. So, it was easy enough to maybe gloss over any bad acting that may have existed.
Yeah, no, just when she, like, wanted to be a more important part and they, like, increased her role and I mean, it was tolerable.
Except that Mystique was never a like primary character anyway. She's a plot device mostly.
Yeah, and like they increased her role in Days of Future Past, and I let that slide, even though some of it was quite ridiculous. But then in Apocalypse, I was just like, she's leading the Avengers now? Like, fuck that. Like, I just, so dumb. And they're like trying to like make her a good guy because like I don't know if she doesn't want to have to play a bad guy. Like, why did you go to a casting thing for a bad guy? Like.
Well, no, Mystique has moments of flipping back and forth.
Nothing near as much as she does in that, though. Like she's more of an anti-hero when she's playing a hero role, but like, she's not the leading the Avengers, giving inspirational speeches type ever. Yeah, it's just nuts. Like, and then like another thing in Apocalypse is they like,
the other side of that is that's probably the studio going like, hey, we need a strong female lead or co-lead because every movie for the last 3 or 4 years has had to, like, they're scrambling to find that in any way they possibly can. Fuck the original character story arcs and who gives a shit about, what that character actually is and the fact that there's an existing fan base. Like, we got to have a dominant female lead somewhere in here.
Yeah, how good would Ghostbusters been in the box office if it was an all-male cast?
Here's the thing too.
Well, I don't think that's an equal justification. The answer is, it's not Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd.
Well, that's the thing. It's
like
like they could have gotten some great female comedians, better than like bottom of the barrel, which is like what Melissa McCarthy is. Like she's the female Adam Sandler. Not
that's
funny.
not that's not fair to Adam Sandler. I'm sorry, Adam Sandler. 1990s Adam Sandler is
Adam
amazing.
Sandler had some
Melissa McCarthy has never had she's never even seen what that looks like.
To Adam Sandler. His recent stand-up was actually very, very well done. I really enjoyed that.
I haven't seen it, but I heard that.
I would encourage people to watch like the 100% Fresh. Like if you like kind of like old school Adam Sandler, or ever watched any of his stand-up and enjoyed it, it's very reminiscent of his old stuff.
He's all right. The thing about Adam Sandler is like he was good in the 90s because his act was fresh, and then it's just like he played the same character in every single movie, and it just got boring.
Yeah.
I actually watched Clicker, the film he did, Clicker, a couple of weeks ago with a friend, and it's just Bruce Almighty, just rubbish. Essentially, that is basically what the concept of it is. It's just this guy has the power with this small remote control, and he can do everything he wants, and it turns out badly. And it's just you could just tell exactly what the plot was.
Instead of Morgan Freeman, you get Christopher Walken.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good trade actually. I didn't see that one, but Christopher Walken, all right.
Going back to the Ghostbusters thing, where because like they kept trying to say it's like. Like, oh, it's important for like, like here's the thing. Every time there's this like female-led movie, people like everybody's always saying it's like, like there's no female-led movies out there, like ignoring all these like amazing movies that have really amazing female leads. But I'm always saying like all those people who held up Ghostbusters 2016 as it's important because they have a female lead. How many of those people had even like tried to see Annihilation? All female.
Because they're they're a completely different movie.
But like sci-fi kind of like with a a little bit of horror, but
it's real sci-fi and horror versus comedy with a splash
of
sci-fi.
Like you don't have to say they don't even have to say they like the movie, but they it's not even that the movie is good. People say it's important because it's a female-led movie.
If you're team girl,
if you're team girl, like people should have been like, yes, go see Annihilation because like it's a group of ladies, and that movie was fucking awesome. Like it was a mind trip, but. It was really good. It was intense in a lot of sections. It was confusing as hell towards the end, which I actually like when movies kind of get that way to the point that makes you like want to rewatch or like talk to people about it and like discuss it, like any Stanley Kubrick movie, But like, like it was good, like because I didn't even know anything about it really, and I watched it and I'm like, okay, there's like a couple guys in it. There's like one guy that's in it more than most, but the majority of the movie is focused on this female team, and that's it. Like if you want to like be teen girl, like those are the kind of movies, like good movies that isn't girls for the sake of girls. Like they had a reason for that, for it being an all girl team, is because they were sending all these like male military guys, so they wanted to see it. And then like basically the opposite of a team of female scientists. Let's try something different, sending them into this area. Like I have no problem. Like I think the whole gender thing as like an excuse to reboot something is stupid, but I don't have a problem with like all female like lead movies. It's just like I want them to be good, Like
no, what it is for me, it's like
easy.
No, what it is for me, it's like I don't mind them, but come up with something original, and that goes for like anything. It's like you're expecting like a character to be a certain way if you're a fan of the series, and then it's like if they stray too far away from it, it kind of fucks with your head.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Some of that is like you get you run into necessities of licensing and weird stuff that like there's just no getting around. Like I was talking to somebody on Twitter the other day because I went not last weekend but the weekend before. Sarah and Liberty went out of town, and I went and saw Captain Marvel, walked out of Captain Marvel when it was over, bought a ticket to Endgame, and went and sat through Endgame. I was at the movie theater for 5.5 hours. It was awesome. Hadn't done that since like high school.
Yeah.
And I went to one of the newer movie theaters around here that like serves drinks and food and whatnot. Right. So like I ate and got hammered, and it was amazing. But I was talking to somebody about going to see Endgame, and they were like, "Well, did Adam Warlock show up?" And I was like, "No."
Yeah.
And they were like, "Well, how are you going to have Infinity War
That
and
was-
Endgame without Adam Warlock?" And I'm like, "Dude, nobody knows who Adam Warlock is."
Okay. Actually, I could like walk over to the side. I have like 5 Adam Warlock action figures to the side. I'm a huge Infinity Gauntlet fan, and like Thanos before he became popular, before anybody even knew who the fuck Thanos was. And like I have like an Infinity Gauntlet piggy bank. I have like all this Thanos stuff. Like my friends, if they want to get me something, they know to get me something Thanos or Infinity Gauntlet related, which has actually been great with this movie because like merchandise has been
all over the place. All of a sudden.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Adam
speaking-
Warlock is a
speaking-
little less hard to find. I'm actually can't wait until he gets introduced in the MCU, and I'm hoping he'll be done right. I know he'll probably be in the 3rd Guardians.
He
But
is, yeah.
my thing is, I was like, is he going to be in Infinity War? Like, how do you do that story without him? And I'm like, okay, but how do you do the story without Silver Surfer? How do you do the story without Eternity? How do you do the story without, this and that and that? I'm like, they're going to have to adapt it. They're going to have to put stuff around. I just got to accept it.
I don't know Adam Warlock's background story enough to
Yeah.
know where the licensing rights ended up, but I know like Silver Surfer was Fox until Endgame was basically in the can.
Mhm.
So you're screwed. Like tough shit. Like it ain't happening. Like, there's a bunch of that stuff. There's a bunch of that too, where like there's all the X-Men crossover that you couldn't have done that everybody wanted, and there's Spider-Man crossover stuff that you couldn't do until recently. And I'm happy that Disney bought all the Marvel stuff back from Fox.
Yeah.
Because like growing up in the 90s, the Saturday morning cartoon stuff was Spider-Man and X-Men.
Hell yeah.
And that stuff is crossover central, baby. Like if you get one and not the other, it's gonna suck because a ton of the Spider-Man bad guys are also X-Men bad guys, and there's a huge amount of crossover, and it's like, how are you gonna do Spider-Man really well if you only own the Spider-Man properties? Like,
that was about those 2 cartoons was great. Was there's actually a Spider-Man, 2 Spider-Man episodes. It was a 2-parter where the X-Men come in, like from that show, like all the same voice actors and stuff. They're done in the Spider-Man animation, but they actually cross over. And then like the Spider-Man show was so cool about that because they had, there's an episode where there's Iron Man comes in. There's one with War Machine. The end of that show, the 90s Spider-Man, where they did the whole Secret Wars thing. They had Captain America. They had the Fantastic Four. They had Storm from the X-Men. Like they went all out about like this giant crossover stuff. And it's like Spider-Man was like, I don't know, like Spider-Man. They had like Blade, the Punisher.
There's a ton of stuff inside the Spider-Man world. And I was like, but a huge chunk of it is like, oh, it's mutation because Spider-Man is technically a mutation because of the spider bite.
That was the thing, yeah.
That's how they get the crossovers. It's all mutants. And so you go, okay, well, if it's all mutants and like techno freaks, like, okay, so are you going to just redo the like Toby, whatever the fuck the kid's name is, trilogy of Spider-Man? Like you're going to,
yeah.
You're going to do the original, like you're going to do the 3 Spider-Man movies that have already been done. You're going to do them again because they did that with Andrew Garfield too. They were starting to redo the same trilogy.
Oh, they tried to, yeah.
We don't need another. Here's Spider-Man's origin story.
Yeah.
And like they kind of sort of started to do that with Homecoming, but like they jumped it ahead really fast. They went, oh yeah, here's the spider bite and bang.
Yeah, I like how they kind of like
let's move.
Things, yeah.
Like we need to reset and establish new kid as Spider-Man.
Yeah, but it's the thing is like everybody knows who Spider-Man is and what his backstory is. Like when Iron Man came out,
they've done backstory Spider-Man twice in the last 15 years.
Exactly.
Like, we all know the story.
Even if you didn't already know from the comics or cartoons, like
go watch the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, which is actually kind of decent.
But like this just the thing when you have these movies, like you have to kind of like accept there's going to be changes that they can't be like the comics. And I'm like, the comics are still there. But like when it comes to cartoons and stuff, like once Disney took over, they started this really horrible Avengers cartoon. I did not like it at all. Apparently they've started a new one and I haven't had a chance to check it out. But before then, they had this cartoon, Avengers Assemble. And it only ran
My brother loves that show.
Fucking best. And like, and I grew up on the 90s Spider-Man and X-Men, and like they were some of my favorites. But I will still say that those 2 seasons of Avengers, no, it wasn't Avengers Assemble. Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That was this one. Avengers Assemble is the shitty one. But yeah, those 2 seasons I feel like were better than all of the X-Men and Spider-Man because they were pulling in like they did the original Avengers from the comic books. Like the original team was actually that original team. A couple episodes later, they bring in Cap just like they did in the comic books. They pulled in people like they had Vision and like Black Panther and all this stuff before like people were ever seeing these things in the movie, you know, like. So if you were a fan of the comics, like it was such a treat because like you got like they changed up storylines, but they did like Secret Wars, they did all this different stuff. They were setting up for even more, but like the show got canceled once Disney bought it. But like they were setting up for like Thor Ragnarok, they were setting up for a Civil War, like they were setting up for all kinds of amazing stories. And so, like I'm still bummed out that whole show got, you know, messed up, like got canceled. But like those 2 seasons were so goddamn good. Like it was like some of the best comic book stuff. Like you had Spider-Man come in the second season. You have Wolverine show up. Like they actually do a new Avengers where you have like Spider-Man Thing, Wolverine, War Machine. Like you have the Guardians of the Galaxy come in for an episode with like Star-Lord, Groot, Rocket. Adam Warlock is on the team then. Quasar. Like it was amazing. Like they went into and pulled in so many bits and pieces. Like they did old storylines, they did new storylines, they brought in tons of characters. It was fucking awesome.
So here's the question I have then.
Yeah.
Since we've established the fact that like we're all total nerds,
Mhm.
are you dropping Netflix? Are you dropping Netflix for Disney?
Okay. Well, I currently have Netflix and Hulu.
I have Netflix, Hulu, HBO, and Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I have Amazon Prime. We didn't get Amazon Prime for the movies and stuff.
Right. I've got it for other
like,
reasons, but it comes with the movies.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so that's when I won't be getting rid of Amazon Prime because my wife uses it for a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So like it's more of like it depends on the pricing and everything like that. But like at first I was like, there's no way in hell I will drop Netflix for Disney. Like it's just.
And then you realize everything Netflix is losing because it's reverting to Disney, and you're like,
then, like,
oh,
thinking about it, it's like, wait, what all does Disney own? They own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they own all these classic Disney movies, they own all this new stuff Disney's coming out with. This is gigantic universe. And then you start hearing about, hey, we're gonna do a Falcon and Winter Soldier show. We're gonna do a Vision and Wanda TV show. And, like that's what I want to see. Because I love
Mandalorians and all the Star Wars stuff that they could theoretically do.
Like,
and apparently, there's some talk that they're going to like open the Disney vaults and a bunch of the old classic movies that you can't get anymore are going to be available.
I've heard that too.
Like,
I've heard like they're going to start off at like a really low, very tempting.
Well, yeah, because they got to pull people off of Netflix. That's part of it.
Like I know whatever they start off with, that's not going to be their end. And here's the thing too. Like just recently, Netflix had to increase their subscription fee. So I'm like, okay, Disney has the backing. They have the financial
and
means.
the capital. Yeah.
They have the financial means to just come in.
Yeah,
and
I'm kind of amazed.
Netflix
I'm
completely.
kind of amazed they didn't just buy Netflix out.
I think that I think here's the thing though is they're gonna make Netflix cheaper to buy before they buy them. They're gonna come in.
Oh, that's interesting.
Drop their
yeah, but then, oh man, that's a tough bargain versus going, hey, I'm gonna buy you now. And you guys get to retain some, like we're going to buy a 52% stake in the company, and you guys get to retain ownership and ride that wave.
Yeah, I think they're playing a long game for like
brand. You're gonna risk losing all of Netflix's brand loyalty and market capture.
Yeah,
Or let's create a new service. Like that's crazy.
I think what they'll do is they'll just fold Netflix in.
Eventually,
if they buy it, they'll just fold it in and
the difference being
Netflix will automatically have Disney or something like that.
Except the problem with that for me is, or the problem I see with that is, Netflix has license agreements with all kinds of other companies.
Mm-hmm.
So if Disney doesn't own Netflix, like, what do you do with all the other stuff that goes into all, like, what do you, and part of it I know for, like, I'm looking at it going, okay, Disney's looking at this going, well, we're getting a fraction of what our properties are worth because we're licensing them to Netflix.
Yeah,
we can get all of it. And we're big enough and we've got enough, like we just bought Fox, we've got a bunch of Sony licensed stuff reverting back to us from the Marvel universe. We've got Marvel and Star Wars and all of our kids' properties and all the standard Disney stuff. And all the ABC stuff and all of so Hulu's going to lose a bunch of stuff too. Like The Runaways is going away because that's Marvel, and all the ABC TV shows that are on Hulu are going to go. Like, I know we're moving to Disney. Like, I know we're going to have to get Disney because my wife's shows are all ABC shows and Disney owns ABC, and all the Hulu stuff on everything Hulu that my wife watches is on ABC.
And my family is just a bunch of nerds too, and
it's
Marvel
But I'm looking at Netflix going, what are you gonna have left? You're gonna have original Netflix programming and a bunch of lame ass movies from the '90s. Oh boy.
Yeah, no, they're gonna lose a lot of
lame ass movies.
I just it was brought up in the chat that there's talk Disney's for their streaming service is that they're gonna try to do a what if series based off of the What If comics. I'm like, I've been wanting something like that for so long. I love the What If comics where they do these alternate timelines where they change one thing and see how that would play out. They've done some so fucking amazing ones. And that's actually what ultimately led to Deadpool kills the Marvel universe, where Deadpool goes a level above what the crazy he already is and just sets out to eliminate every superhuman from the superhero or supervillain from the entire Marvel universe. And then it brought into our reality and slaughtering the comic book writers that are writing the comic book that he's in. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I read that one. It's amazing.
Yeah, it was a 4-part series. It was really good. Then they did a Punisher kills the Marvel universe. But then they also do just things what if Aunt May died instead of Uncle Ben? What if Jessica Jones joined the Avengers when they had offered it? After she broke free of her mind control stuff from Kilgrave. Just a lot of little things. What if I'm trying to think of one. I don't know. It's a ton of different things. And it's just it's just really just kind of a simple premise of what if this one thing changed? And it's always a very entertaining story. There was one of where Scarlet Witch, because there's a point in the Marvel comics where she goes crazy and wipes out all half the mutants and stuff. But there was something where she kind of is subtly killing off a bunch of Avengers, and then she mind controls Captain America basically, and Scarlet Witch and Captain America are on this island, and the Avengers and some of the X-Men have to go and try to plan this assault on them, and Captain America is this strategic genius, so they're having a hard time. I don't know, it's fucking crazy. But yeah, it's having these just even if it's 40 minutes, even if it's a half hour, just with a live action, even
they could do cartoon. They could do 4-part series.
Yeah.
You could do 2 hours total of all kinds of different things that open up a whole world of. No, I think it's interesting. Everybody's like, oh my god, Disney owns everything. Disney owns everything, and it's yeah, Disney owns everything. This is true.
Yeah.
But there's a benefit to efficiencies of scale.
Yeah.
And sitting on a ridiculous pile of money.
Mm-hmm.
That means you can do all kinds of cool things all of a sudden.
There was we took my daughter to oh god, this was 5-6 years ago. No, more 5 years ago. We took her to this Disney on Ice thing. It was a princess's Disney on Ice, and we had front row seats. We were this far away from the actual ice. It was pretty cool. But when we got to the show, we suddenly realized we were all wearing Disney shirts. My daughter was, of course, wearing a Disney princess shirt. I was wearing a Star Wars shirt. My wife was wearing a Marvel shirt. I was like, oh, hey, we're all Disney for the Disney show.
Whoops.
Yeah, we didn't plan that, but it was It's really easy to be a Disney fan right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just the amount of money they're sitting on, just cash.
Yeah.
Every one of the Marvel movies has made somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
They're just
I looked it up, and I think they have, over the course, their cinematic universe has pulled in like $11 billion or something like that. Like it's
So they're making $1 billion a year.
yeah, basically it's like and I mean like it's a record that's like surpassed any possible previous record of like the highest grossing like series
well, it's the biggest movie franchise in history.
Yeah, it's the highest grossing movie franchise in history, and I don't think that's ever going to be surpassed. Yeah, like how do you surpass that? Like having like every movie,
you'd have to come up with a new a new property, because part of that is like DC doesn't have enough depth to do the number of movies Marvel's done. There's just not enough there there's not enough universe to their universe to spread out that big,
Yeah.
Star Wars might get close the way Disney's pushing it.
I think
but they started later. They're behind. So how do you catch up?
Just even with there's been more pushback lately of people just getting sick of it. Like, people are still especially after Endgame, people are craving more Marvel. People are getting sick of Star Wars, and they've barely gotten into their new they haven't even finished their new trilogy.
Well, part of it though is they did
Rian Johnson
botched the last movie. Yeah, they botched that movie. Like you do Rogue One, and then Episode 7, and then Solo, and then don't botch 8, and I'm all the way back in.
They made the same problem that
you botch 8, and I go, well, fuck you for getting my hopes up.
They made the same issue that the DC guys did. Like they didn't have the Kevin Feige. They didn't have a person overwatching everything and being okay, here
Disney does. She's just not up to it. Whatever.
But
Kathy, whatever her name is.
They had most of Solo done, and then she finally looks at it and says, "This is garbage. We have to start from scratch." Basically,
yeah. So she's not. Okay, they've got that person.
Yeah,
but
she's just not doing a very good job.
I mean, she's not Kevin Feige.
Yeah.
Kathy, whatever her name is, and it's crazy too because she was the licensing rights director at Lucas during the heyday of the books in the 90s. Her name is in all of the novels that I read as a kid because she's been there forever. But the transition from running kind of a licensing organization to you're managing the Kevin Feige, the MCU is his brainchild. That's his baby. Yeah. He mapped it all out. He had the vision. He went and sold it to Bob Iger. There's no overriding. I think that's the issue. It's not that they don't have a person. It's that person doesn't have the vision that Kevin took a look at all the properties and went, we can start over in movies and retell all of this back catalog that we have, bring in all these amazing characters, tell all of these different stories, and start with a new audience, basically from scratch. So lots of name recognition, lots of brand loyalty already built in, but we can start over and do it all as movies from the beginning. You can't do that with Star Wars, for starters. You can't just start Star Wars again. You can't restart. It didn't start as books. It started as movies, and there's such a loyalty there that you can't just start over. And so you needed a different vision, and that vision just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so the execution has been
and that's
DC-esque.
Feige, they had a couple stumbles with
Thor,
Age of Ultron, I would say, where
or not Thor, Hulk.
Yeah, Hulk wasn't great. I think Age of Ultron was nowhere near as good as if it should have been. And that's honestly I was actually so happy when Joss Whedon wasn't coming back for the third Avengers movie because Ultron pissed me off the way he handled. They're by and large, I actually like and enjoy the movie and I can rewatch it. But there are decisions he made that just I'm oh fucking Joss Whedon, I hate you sometimes. I fucking hate you sometimes. But they overall they have this vision. They have this way they want to go. They bring in writers, they bring in directors and say make this movie. You can start here and try to end up here, but fill in the blanks. Just don't make any crazy, drastic, universe altering decisions, and you actually can read a lot of ideas they had for Endgame. And you realize these writers actually, because people make it sound like they're stuck, they're very strict. but the writers actually had quite a bit of freedom. Like they had like, they brought up ideas and like changed stuff around, but like there was a lot of stuff they like ways they could have gone within game that like was pretty much up to the writers of whether or not they did it. Like overall, it seems like Marvel has like an idea of where they want to end up, but like a lot of the ways that they decide to get there, they're not like picky on, as long as it,
kind of makes sense.
It works. Yeah, as it makes sense, and it's not like doesn't kind of mess up anything else along the way. Because they got a continuity they're trying to stick to, which isn't perfect, but I mean, considering the amount of movies it spans, it's pretty damn
close.
good. Yeah,
it's pretty close.
You can't.
They haven't had to retcon a whole lot.
No, yeah, like you can't do like 20 some movies and have a perfect continuity, but for 20 some movies, they have done a damn good job. Like there's like a YouTube video. I'll try to see if I can find it. I'll show it to you too. It's like they talk about just like little things throughout the movies of like callbacks and stuff to like different like
and all the like post credit and mid roll credit Easter egg. Like, hey, this is a thing that it's gonna tie into a movie that's not coming out for 2 years.
Yeah,
but we already know enough of what that next movie is going to be that we're going to drop this.
Yeah,
like, we've got the cast all together in costume from the next movie to shoot a 30-second post credit Easter egg.
Yeah,
to tie into the next piece. Like, good grief.
There were little things too, though. Like I never noticed. I started watching these movies and I was like, holy shit! Like. And the first Iron Man, like when he gets hit by like that tank and falls down, like there's this thing where like they theorize like when that happened, like it messed up a nerve in his like arm and his wrist. And you'll notice from then on, different movies, he just randomly starts like rubbing his wrist, like and like that, and different, just subtle, never like really any attention called to it, but it's like he'll start kind of like going like this, like his wrist is bothering him. Yeah, and it's kind of weird. It's like, okay, like, yeah, I didn't ever notice that before. Like, it seems like just such a normal thing, but it's always the same wrist, the same spot. I'm like,
yeah, for all the complaints of, well, this story wasn't quite that way, or oh, they strayed too far from the comic books, or oh, this actor wasn't as good as it could have been, or taken in scope, like taken in its completion.
Agreed.
The MCU is a masterwork.
Yeah.
Like
it's
a piece of art on a scale that has
been
achieved.
Unprecedented.
Well, I mean, there's, as far as movies are concerned, there's things of like,
as far as
I'm thinking like, Notre Dame took however many hundreds of years to build over generations to turn that.
And I'm thinking like, in the scope of movie cinema,
there's human scaled things that are bigger. But not to put it on that same kind of like religious scale or like, hey, think about the tools they were using at the time. But it's the same concept of like, this is a massive project that has involved thousands of people over more than a decade. That is commercially viable. It's not funded by taxation or church tithing or whatever.
It's funded by people like them making a good product and people wanting to consume that product.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's going to be taught in film and business schools forever at this point.
Yeah, there was this like it's like a for fun thing that they do at like different Comic Cons, but these people have like this kind of debate thing, and they had I don't know, one of the guys, like he was part of it, but they had him as part of the debate for whatever reason. But then they had like Elijah Wood come out. And Kevin Smith, and the whole thing was that they were going to so there's like 3 of these people doing the debate, and it was all these like they would ask a question, they would give their answers, and then like they would kind of argue their answers, and then people would like vote for who they thought had the best thing, and it was like this little like death match kind of thing. But one of my favorite things was like they were like, who do you think is like your like the best like living movie maker like out there right now? I'm like, I think Elijah Wood said Steven Spielberg, the other guy said somebody else I don't remember, and then Kevin Smith was like, well, I'm going to make a different choice and I'm not going to go for a director, I'm going to say Kevin Feige, and then he made the argument that like, okay, he's not a director, but like he's in charge, like we're talking about somebody who makes movies, not necessarily a director, like, and he's been in charge of, and he's helped been a part of and made this massive franchise that nobody else has been able to replicate. You would think, you'd think it'd be easy, but nobody else, everybody who's tried has failed. And typically when they failed miserably. Like a lot of these, Sony wanted to do it with their Spider-Man. Fox tried to do it with their Fantastic Four. Like they were trying to set up future movies. Universe twice failed on their first movie. Like every DC really fucked up a lot. Like they're kind of help changing course a little bit now, but
but you look at it and go, oh, we've got this Joaquin Phoenix Joker. Like we're restarting Joker
it's so
again.
Weird. Yeah. Oh, okay. Here's the thing. DC's animated movie universe is actually really incredibly good.
Yeah.
Because they start with Justice League War. Justice League comes together and meets for the first. Actually, it technically starts with Flashpoint Paradox, the Flashpoint Paradox, because at the very end they're in their New 52 uniforms and stuff. But it starts with Justice League War. The Justice League comes together and everything, and then there's a sequel to the Justice League where there's not there's sort of a Justice League, but they've not really come together again. And then they do finally come back together. They have Aquaman there, and they kind of officially form their Justice League thing. Then there's 3 Batman solo movies that take place in the same continuity, same Batman guy and everything. Then they do this Teen Titans versus the Justice League, where Damian from the Batman solo movies is taken to the Teen Titans, and he joins them. And there's a whole thing there where some of the Justice League is brainwashed, and they have to the Teen Titans have to fight them. Then the Teen Titans get their own movie. Then there's a Dark Justice League that has Batman and a bunch of other Constantine and these other guys. Then they did
I forgot Constantine is DC.
Yeah. Then they did Death of Superman, which was actually really good. It was way better than the last time they tried to do an animated version of it. It did really well. They obviously couldn't adapt it completely, perfectly, because they were trying to keep it in this same newer continuity that they had. But they did a really good job of sticking to the core concept. And I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but they did come out with recently the Reign of Superman, / Superman Reborn. So they're bringing in Steel and Superboy and that other dude I can't remember, Cyborg Superman, and there's one more I can't remember. But yeah, they have this continuity going with these other Superman, the Justice League, the Teen Titans, Batman, and it's just comprehensive, decent DC superhero universe. And I'm I really wish their their live action cinematic movies could be as good and cohesive as they've made those animated movies. And I would really encourage people, if they want to see a good DC cinematic universe, look up the DC animated universe. They have a bunch of other movies too, that they put out there here and there that don't actually play into that continuity, but you can look up what the continuity is and see the movies in the order to watch them and everything. But it's really good.
Yeah, DC is an interesting conundrum. Part of me wonders how much of that problem is that they went with Zack Snyder based on his Watchmen work and thinking, oh, he can adapt comic books, not realizing that's the only style he can pull off.
Yeah,
and it doesn't cross. It's
Zack Snyder. He nobody is ever going to claim that Zack Snyder doesn't make amazing visuals. He does some amazing visuals, but his storytelling really needs a lot of work.
Well, so some of that is Watchmen was pretty good, I thought, and I thought 300 is good as well. But you're going from okay, I've got a graphic novel which spells everything out for me, because there's enough in a singular graphic novel, there's enough story material there to go okay, cool, I don't have to rewrite parts of the story, I don't have to add things. Yeah. And then you go to Suicide Squad or Batman or whatever, and you go, well, where do I start? How do I restyle? Nobody wants another Batman origin story, and and it's interesting to me because part of me, when he looks at it and goes, well, it's got to be Zack Snyder. Like, you got to point the finger at him because DC's animated stuff is all pretty good, and the Gotham TV show was pretty solid. And
Yeah,
like,
I don't think it's Zack Snyder's fault alone, but yeah, I think he definitely.
well, obviously, there's other people to blame that put him in charge and let him kind of run the candy shop without paying
Yeah,
attention.
him having
But, like,
too much freedom was a big deal.
but like, you got what you paid for. Like the story, like stylistically, Suicide Squad is the same as 300 or Watchmen. It's dark and artsy and slow.
Yeah,
And it's just like, oh, that's not what you wanted from, a Suicide Squad. The like books are flashy and colorful and like,
oh
yeah, it's dark in
real
places.
quick, part of the DC animated universe. They did a Suicide Squad movie. Guess what? It's pretty fucking good. Go ahead.
No, I mean, that was it. I just like, you just look at it and kind of go like, okay, so something like obviously writing and kind of telling the story, if it has to be somewhat original, is not his bag.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally forgot that, like, the Suicide Squad movie, like the live action one, was terrible. They went in the wrong. Like, the biggest problem was the Suicide Squad is not supposed to be like, like the backup for Superman concept. Like, there's supposed to be a black op government funded group that goes in and like does like black ops stuff, and if they're like dangerous stuff, so if they die, no big deal.
And super dirty, sketchy, maybe not legal. Like,
so they've done 2 Suicide Squad animated movies, and the first one actually ties in with the Arkham games.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like, I think it takes place between Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. I think that was the case. I can't really remember. Maybe it takes place before Arkham Asylum. I'd have to look it up again. It's like, but it's like sold as a Batman movie, like, the Batman and like Assault on Arkham or something like that. But it's a Suicide Squad movie. Batman's barely in it. Like the Suicide Squad has to go into Arkham, and they're supposed to like get the Riddler because like he has something that Amanda Waller wants. And what it turns out
about a character that's never been done well.
She's done well there though. Like, it turns out
the Batman TV show from the 90s was amazing.
Oh yeah, they did it well there too. The thing that Riddler has in the movie that Amanda Waller desperately wants is the way to remove the bombs from the Suicide Squad next. Like, yeah, that's why she's so desperately. But like,
that's awesome.
It kind of backfires. But yeah, like then they did Suicide Squad Hell to Pay, and it, like, I think that's the name of it, and it ties in with their their new DC animated universe, and it's really well done because it's this concept of like, they're going on a mission, like this kind of black ops, like shady mission, for the government kind of thing, where like they're completely disposable, and the beauty is like, they're bad guys, so nobody's going to care if they go missing, kind of thing. Like, that's what they were supposed to be. And like, that's where the live action movie fucked up so much, was that they like, oh, they're going to be like this replacement for Superman, so we're going to get this like crazy chick with a baseball bat. Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Makes more sense if you send her in to like, do this shady black ops thing where like, it's okay if she dies, let's just send her in. Who gives a fuck? That makes way more sense. And then like them trying to be these heroes and like be anti-heroes kind of thing, like, it's just terrible way of doing it. Like, they didn't quite want to make like the bad guy movie, and like they could have just went for it. Like, Marvel could still do like a Thunderbolts thing like that, where it's like this shady, like they're doing like shady black ops stuff, or it's like this team of bad guys doing stuff. I'm like, Suicide Squad wasn't that. It was basically just another superhero movie with like, people with morally questionable backgrounds. Like, they just did superhero stuff. Like, I didn't, like I was kind of sold one movie and I got a completely different one. I was very disappointed with that.
Well, I have seen probably 0 of the last 150 movies that you guys named.
We can change gears. I was just wait for a second. So keep going.
I was just about to say.
Yeah, you guys might as well have been. Yeah, you guys might as well have been speaking Greek. Actually, I think I know Greek better than I know Marvel Comics.
No, I just enjoy listening to it because you know so much, and I'm just like more casual. So I just enjoy hearing the in-depths of it all.
I'm like, I think I'm even lower than casual. I'm like, like I kind of know a
Aware
little
that it
bit, like,
exists.
yeah, I watch like the first Avengers movie and like Thor, because I have like a bunch of friends that are really into comics too, and it's like they like I was like, okay, like this one looks pretty cool, I'll check it out, whatever. But you know, I'm really getting, I'm big into wrestling. That's my nerddom.
Yeah, so I think that's funny that, like, I don't know, I wasn't allowed to watch that stuff as a kid in the '90s, so like I missed that whole thing.
Oh, that was the best time. Best time, man. They had pimps and porn stars and you name it, man. They had everything going on.
Which would be
All
why I wasn't allowed to watch it.
Right. That was a good stuff. I still watch it to this day, no matter how disappointing it gets. Which gets pretty
Yeah, I mean,
disappointing, actually.
part of that though is like just being a kid and going, well, this is the thing I grew up liking. So
Yeah.
on some levels,
Yeah.
it's like I like Totino's pizzas and Taco Bell. I'm aware that it's garbage, like it's complete trash food, but I grew up on that crap and I still like it. So tough.
Yeah. Right.
That's it.
It's like, I do have a lot of respect for, as bad as the script gets, like, I have respect for, the people involved, because, like, you got to think about, like, these guys are stuntmen, actors, and they're, like, flying around the world doing it.
Oh, and they travel like 300 days a year and perform,
Yeah.
travel and perform 300 days a year.
There's no off season. They'll, like, go on, like, an injury.
Yeah.
Go on vacation with an injury or go shoot a movie or something. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
I've met.
The Undertaker lives here in Austin, and I've met him. And,
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that guy can barely walk.
Oh, yeah.
Like he's had multiple
first...
spine, like he's had multiple like fusions in his back, and his knees are shot, and like yeah. I mean, he can walk, but it's like you can see like he's not bending right. Like you know how you get that like.
And the sad part is they still drag him out for a performance once a year, and it's just like everyone gets excited. I'm like, how are you excited about this? Like,
which guy are we talking about?
Undertaker.
That's all fucked up. Undertaker?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he still coming out and everything?
Speaking of which,
I thought I just saw some promo like he's going to be in some show soon, right?
I haven't watched wrestling in like.
I'm not sure. I don't keep up with.
Like I like the last time, like when I kind of got out of wrestling was when Mick Foley like had come back as Mankind for a little bit and then left again. I think he came back after that, but like I was out. Like the only reason I ever like really got into wrestling was because of Mick Foley, because like I was fucking crazy. Everybody would be like, wrestling's fake, and then you show them a Mick Foley like match and be like, how is that fake? Like I know a lot of wrestling's scripted and a lot of it's fake, but like you can't fall from like the top of this giant thing onto a table and say that's fake. Like you can't get choke slammed through it.
Yeah. You know what I always tell people that do that? Abdullah the Butcher. YouTube or Google or whatever, Abdullah the Butcher, and that is the most insane shit you'll ever see. But you guys happen to miss, I'm assuming, when Trump ran Raw. He came in and owned part of WWE, like as a storyline, and he was running Raw. He gave the people commercial-free Raw. He was actually a great boss. Everyone loved him before he became president.
There's a couple of things from the chat. Seth Theory says the Undertaker is going to need his own Undertaker in a couple of years.
Yeah.
Then Dave says that he heard somewhere that Undertaker is a dungeon master. Has anybody heard that before?
I would not know.
Like in D&D?
Yeah. I got the reference. I just don't.
Oh, I didn't. I thought somebody said they didn't know what a dungeon master. Sorry. Yeah, that would be interesting though. I have heard things like that, like WWF, and I'm still going to call it WWF. I'll never call it WWE. That they had like their own like locker room like court thing that they would do. Like if there was some beef between like a couple people, they would have this like court set up, and Undertaker, like he was basically the like judge always, and like he was like the between like wrestlers and management typically. And then like a lot of the times, like, you know, if like somebody was like accusing somebody of doing something shitty or something, like they'd get taken to the locker room court, and like the majority of the time their penalty was like having to give the Undertaker beer or something like that, like a case of beer or something. Like there's a lot of stories like that like he would just like, you know, like he was kind of in charge of the locker room, like nobody fucked with him and everybody like took their property.
Yeah, I don't know how true. See, I don't know how true that was, because it was always like, you know, because there was like some real shit going on backstage, but it was always like that group was like Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, like, because they were like all like buddy with the CEOs and everything, so they like kind of secretly ran the place back in the 90s.
Yeah. So from the chat, somebody, because D&D was brought up, asking, had like, I don't know if anybody here actually plays D&D.
Playing tomorrow.
Oh, really? Nice.
Mm-hmm.
My cousin plays D&D. His wedding me and my wife went to like last month was really cool because they had a lot of references to books and like games at their wedding. Their whole wedding was like book themed. Their like the like reservation, like where the people like were their table reservation stuff was written on old library cards for books. Their like boutonnieres were, instead of flowers, they were D&D dice glued together.
That's cool.
It was fucking awesome. Like if I'll see if I can find a picture, I'll show you guys. I'll post it on Twitter or something. But yeah, it was really cool. So I'm like, yeah, we need to get you guys to come over. Like I haven't played D&D in a long time, and like I had
never played until like 3 months ago.
Yeah, like I never got into like D&D so much. Like I had played like a little bit, and then I played like Vampires Masquerade. But what me and my friends would typically do is we actually built our own pen and paper games. Like I built one that was based off of Final Fantasy VII. It was based in the same world. I created a materia system, a limit break system, and everything. And like we would like design, like, I mean, it would take a long time, but like we'd build up our whole like, you know, like math system for like building characters and how you would do attacks and different things like magic and stuff like that. It was a lot of fun.
Here's the crazy fun part about D&D now.
Yeah.
Is you can play the whole game on Discord. So like the group that I play with, I'm in Austin. Our dungeon master's in Dallas. One of the other people is in North Carolina, and the other person's in Vegas.
Nice.
And if they have like a dice bot, so that everybody can see in the like Discord server room, like they can see, you roll your dice, you like put in a command code, it rolls the dice, it like randomizes everything. The dungeon master can drop in pictures of the rooms and everything. Like everything's all through Discord. So it's
cool.
actually gotten super easy to play, and it's really
cool. Yeah,
I like Discord. Discord's actually really good.
We'll see how long that lasts since Microsoft bought them.
The only dice game I play is the kind that costs $100 per minute.
No, like because we did these things where we made these games, and when I was in high school, so we would get together on the weekends and like basically play the entire weekend, like playing one game. But this one of our friends, like he made, because a lot of our games would be based off of like one of my friends did one based off of the Breath of Fire RPG video game series, and we'd do stuff like that. But one of my friends made this like really unique one, and it was like you were in the future, like there was like a World War III breaks out, and like a bunch of people like go underground and like go into these like hibernation pods basically to wait out like through the whole thing. So like when you would create your character, you would start because like your pod opens up and you wake up and you're in the future. Like you would get this kind of like shitty little pistol, like, and then like go up above the world, and like most of the world is using like, it's kind of more medieval, but there's still like some guns and stuff like that. So like you'd get like, you know, your sword and stuff. And there were these like mutated people from like the radiation called psychos, and they had these like crazy like super red eyes, and they wore this kind of shiny armor. They carried around like shotguns and magnums and like big broadswords and stuff. And like they were super, super strong because they were mutated. And they would go around to people and like demand a toll from people. Like if they walk up to you and demand a toll, like you'd have to pay them a certain amount of money. And if you couldn't afford it, they would cut you open and drain some of your blood because they used people's blood to make liquor, and they would get drunk off of people's blood. Yeah, it was insane. So
That's
like,
amazing.
yeah, like you would go around, and if one of them approached you, like you didn't even want to attempt to fight them because you'd get your ass kicked. Like we went through a few different like characters before we finally realized like just try to avoid them at all costs. But like you had like a blood tick too. Like if you ran into a certain amount of them, like like you could run out of blood and die from like having your blood drained. But he actually like, eventually got really pissed and kind of like gave up the game because I went to this like me and like these guys went to this island, and there's this like king there that like, and it was actually kind of based off this like story, this one story I'd heard, and apparently he had heard the same story about this like king was like trying to find somebody to solve this like math thing, and if you couldn't solve it, you'd be killed, but if you could solve it, you would be like, you could marry his daughter and like be given all this gold and stuff. And what it was like a way to find like prime numbers like really quickly, 1 through 100, and I knew how to do that. Like I knew, like, I don't know if you guys know that trick of like you just kind of like do this counting thing, like you count like 1, 2, 2's a prime number, so you count like every 2 after that isn't a prime number, so 3 is, so every 3 after that won't be, and like you just keep doing that. You can like map out all the prime numbers from 1 to 100 in like a minute. So I did it.
That's
and
funny.
He didn't think one of us could do it. So he got a little irritated because, he had to, like, I got to marry this royalty chick, but like, which didn't really came to anything except for the fact that like I was given a shitload of gold. And I took like a boat, this giant boat from their like fleet. And then I started this whole like crazy, like we snuck into this psycho's camp and like we poisoned their well and like just slaughtered the entire camp. Like they all died.
So instead of being challenging, you got the like easy pass, and he got pissed.
No, and I didn't get an easy pass. Like it was a lot of work. Like, because I took all their weapons, and then I started this whole like I started my own like military, and like we would like take the bones of people. And, like part of the initiation was like you had to take like the bones of a psycho, and you would turn them into armor. So like our military uniform was this like bone armor, so you looked like you were like a skeleton walking around almost, to like kind of like intimidate people. And then like we would also have like, you'd always have a backpack, and in the backpack you would have like your psycho's armor and like weapons and stuff. So like we would go to a town and we would like basically go straight to like the like head place, like the mayor or like town runner or whatever, and like be like, okay, like where are the local psychos at? Like we would go hunt them down then. And then we would like put on like disguises and stuff. And we found like if we were able to like put stuff in our eyes, it would turn our eyes really red. So like we could pass off as a psycho and like infiltrate their bases and stuff and like kill them. Yeah, after a while, because like it went from like, them being terrifying to us like actively hunting them down. Even though it was incredibly difficult, we had a fucking militia with us of people. Like I started recruiting like all these NPCs and stuff. And he was like, yeah, he got irritated because I completely turned the game around on him. And as much as he tried, he couldn't fairly make them like scary again without like just completely altering the rules he had put in place. And he didn't find it as fun after a while because like we were just owning the world basically. It was awesome.
Yeah, our dungeon master for the game that I'm in like hates it when we like get big easy rolls, and thinks it's hilarious when we roll like ones and like just get destroyed because he's got all these like stupid traps laid for us if we roll like low rolls. He's like just waiting for it. He's like, it's way more interesting when you do something stupid and bad things happen. I'm like, I guess. It's also really annoying.
Yeah, there was in the Final Fantasy VII thing, I created these like because I tried to go off of like what the stats were, for the game. So right. One of them is luck, and luck was typically things like how you could evade or like try to escape. But I changed the concept of it in my game where like I would call for a luck roll every now and then, and it would just be like completely random stuff like. Like you'd be in a battle and like you could trip over a rock and fall on your face, if you failed your luck roll, or you'd be in the city and like somebody would like jump out and try to attack you, and like if you succeeded in a luck roll, like you'd like bend over to pick up a coin or something, and the dude would like jump over you and like get hurt or something like like crazy. I would come up with like the most completely insane scenarios I could, where if you like successfully rolled your luck roll, like like you'd be safe, but if you messed it up, you get fucked up. And like people started trying to put more points into their luck after that. Like I would just come up with these bizarre scenarios. It was fun. Like that's the thing though, like when you're a dungeon master, like you can get a little power hungry and like try to come up with like some crazy shit. But yeah, I did actually it was something like I played with my brother and my wife once. I made a one based off the Fable series from the Xbox. That was fun. But I haven't like tried to make. I don't think I could even do it anymore. Like I've like forgotten how to do all that stuff. But there are some like D&D like pen and paper dice games, but geared more towards like kids. And I want to get something like that sometime to get my daughter into it, because I think she'd really like the concept of like, like the fun thing about pen and paper games, and it's like 100% imagination, and that's what makes it so much fun. My daughter is a very imaginative kid, so I think she'd really enjoy that kind of like having this like complete freedom in a world, and being able to do and go wherever she wants, and like
Yeah, it's also super interesting, like for all of the non-nerds in the group, that like the internet has made all of this stuff resurgent, right? Like this isn't some niche like weird thing that you got to have a group of weirdo friends that locally that'll do stuff with you. Like it's all available online now, and so like the promise of the internet of like, oh, everything you want, if you are into whatever, you can find it. Like, man, that's never been truer for like pen and paper games and board games and card games and like nerd culture in general, especially since like it just kind of embraced the internet as a like, they were first movers.
Funny thing, and this, I never seen this before. It was I've had a couple friends that did it, and I kind of feigned interest in joining a couple of times, but never got around to it. But I was one in Quincy, and I saw this little store that said Game In, so I figured it was like an old video game store. So I was like, oh, let me go check out what they have in there.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up being a complete tabletop store, and like you had like 20 people in there, like just playing tabletop games, like different tabletop games. It was pretty cool.
There's a place here in Austin it's called Tribe 5 Games. It's awesome.
Yeah, we have a game store. Like they have a bunch of tables for tabletop games. They have these like big like 3D. They have these like 3D maps set up for like D&D where there's like mountains and stuff. It's fucking crazy. Yeah. But the best part is like you can buy like a lot of like card games or like like more like board games that are more than just like like action and adventure board games and stuff. But the cool part is they have the store part, and then they have their library part, where you can go in and for free just grab a game off the shelf, go take it down, open it up, and start playing. So like me and my daughter will go there.
That's cool.
And be like, pick out a game. I'm like, we've gotten a few games like she'd get really into, and then if they didn't have it there, they would order it for us. But like she would just fall in love with a lot of games, and like some crazy ones. Like when she was younger, there was one like it was a birthday one where like the box turned into like a cake, and the pieces were candles of different designs, and they would set up on it, and you'd have to roll these dice, and then there's 2 dice, and they would make like have the different designs on them. So the goal was to blow over the candles only with the design that you rolled. So if you knocked over like a different candle, then like you could only like pick up one special piece. If you couldn't knock them all over, then you couldn't pick up any. But if you only knocked over the ones you're supposed to, you get like 2 special pieces. And then be like you'd have like a little card that would have like 4 presents on it, and you'd have to like try to get all the presents for your thing. It was an interesting like little kind of goofy game like that. But I think one of the most interesting ones we got was it's over here somewhere, but I don't remember the name of it. But like it was like
I remember Mousetrap.
Mousetrap, we had that. This one was like you'd have these like plastic monkeys that were like about this tall.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And they have like it was like a catapult thing, their arms, and you'd pick these like little like rubber coconuts, put them in their arms, and they catapult it into a barrel, like on the other player's side. So they'd have barrels and you'd have barrels, and you'd be launching, like, it's your turn. You're like trying to launch these coconuts into their barrels. It's fucking awesome. Like,
it's quarters for kids.
Yeah, it was amazing. And she loved that game. And we still play it every now and
then. Speaking of Mousetrap, I bought Mousetrap a couple of years ago. I have much younger siblings, and we bought it for my little brother's birthday probably 4 or 5 years ago. They fixed Mousetrap. You remember the Mousetrap, like the cardboard, like the board, like the pieces didn't ever fit right?
Yep.
And so it never worked. Well, board now it's all injected molded plastic. It all locks together. It's perfect. It works like a champ. It's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, because that was the biggest problem. It's like you set it all up, and then it's like the thing didn't drop. It's like, wait, what the hell? Like we did all this for nothing. Cardboard tab
would come loose, and it'd lean funny, and then it wouldn't work right.
All right. So I have a couple games that the ones I'm going to show I highly recommend. The first one is Exploding Kittens. My dog made it.
That game's awesome.
Yeah, it's basically all the cats are like going to do something to blow up like everything around them, and you have to prolong their death as long as possible. So it's very bizarre. It's completely humorous. Like my favorite car is the Taco Cat, and it's like a cat in like a taco, and it says like I'm a palindrome. Yeah, it's a lot of like the humor is found mostly in like the cards and what they do and stuff like that. It's really funny.
I'd be horrible at that game. I hate cats. I just blow them up right away.
This is a really good game, Flux. Highly recommend. They have like a million different versions. Like we have a Wizard of Oz version. We have like a Cartoon Network version. Jesus, like a ton of different versions. But the cool thing about it is the rules are constantly changing. Like the basic concept is there'll be like a gold card out, and then you get these things called keepers, which is just like a bunch of random, like it'd be like a cookie and a moon and a sun. But then like, a goal will be something like milk and cookies. And if you have the milk and cookies card, you win, But the rules constantly change. It'll change how many cards you can draw, how many cards you can play per turn. It'll change like, like how many keepers you can have out. And like, it's like you can get cards that'll change how many, like you can just reset the rules. You can add new rules. Like it's constantly changing throughout the game. So like you're always on your toes and always adapting. It's very interesting. I got 4 more real quick, but this was one that I'm sure most people know about. Cards Against Humanity.
Greatest.
Fucking love this game. I am like.
That game is amazing. The best way to play that game, I've done this multiple times. The best way to play that game is with adult friends.
Yes.
And adult substances.
Yes. Okay, like for me,
the more drunk and more stoned you can be while playing that game, the better.
I have played multiple games, like a ton of games with my friends. I've only ever lost once, and that was my wife. But I won every game, and every game I am either drunk or high. And but I come up with the most bizarre, fucked up things.
I highly recommend either or and both.
Yes.
So the first time we played that game was on vacation with some friends before any of us had kids in Colorado, and we played for 12 straight hours.
Nice.
We woke up, ate breakfast. It was like 10 a.m. We're on vacation. Everybody's like, let's day drink. We start drinking at like 10:30. We bust out the card game. By 1 o'clock, we're all wasted. I've fallen out of my chair laughing. We order a pizza from this place in town, and the guy comes to the door and cannot understand for the life of him what's going on, because we're just like, nobody can breathe. Everybody's sweating and crying. And it's like, we're all fully clothed, but like, what the hell is going on here? The pizza guy was so confused.
Yeah.
That game is awesome. The more drunk and the more stoned you can be while playing that game, the better. It's awesome.
My brother got me an expansion too, and
I've got multiple expansions. I've got the bigger, blacker box.
Yeah,
and I've got it more
expansions make it so much more fun.
It's great.
Here's a good one.
There's an expansion that goes with that that's called Crabs Against Humidity. That you just fold it into the deck.
Nice.
It's a totally different manufacturer. It's totally different. But it's an expansion, 2 cards. It's hilarious.
Nice.
That helps also.
If you like RPGs, but like ones that go kind of quick, Munchkin is really good. It's a complete card-based RPG game. like, you know, you get health points and like the cards tell you where you're going and stuff like that. But like the cool thing is that you can kind of like team up with other players to kind of screw over one of the players and stuff. But it's very interesting, and like with like Exploding Kittens and stuff, like a lot of the humor comes from like the illustrations and stuff like that. It's very interesting. Here's one. This is a co-op game. Highly recommend this. Forbidden Islands. These people make a few other games, but like the whole concept is like the game board is a bunch of tiles, card tiles, and you like place them out and it makes an island. And then you have to like work with your teammates to like, there's 4 different like treasures and you have to put them on the cards where they're supposed to go. And then there's like a helipad card. So the whole goal is to get the treasures, get to the helipad. But as you play, like some cards, like, you know, you'll draw these 1 cards and it'll tell you which ones to turn over. So some cards get turned over and then that part of the island is flooded now and you can't go there. So you can work to like unflood different areas and stuff. But if like a tile gets turned over and is flooded and then it gets flooded again, that tile is gone forever. Like it's done from your game. So you can't ever use that area again. And like, you know, if one of your team members dies, it's game over. And like, it's kind of this race to like hurry up and get the treasures, get off before y'all die. And like, it's kind of fun. It's the best part about it is it's a cooperative game. So like, if you're playing with people who don't like to like, you know, play against each other and stuff, it's fun.
That sounds like Pandemic, which I absolutely hated.
It's fun. Like
trash.
Like, here's my thing: is it's really fun to play with my daughter because there's never. Yeah,
I can see that. I had a friend show me the like Pandemic expansion pack, and that looked interesting because it had basically like a hard mode.
Yeah,
and it was like much less cooperative versus like, hey, we're just all trying not to die.
Yeah.
Because the first time I saw Pandemic, my wife was playing at some friend's party, and there were 3 people playing, and it was like I'm watching the game going, there's no way for y'all to lose.
If you bend the rules, but
it wasn't even bending the rules. It was like they got to a certain point pretty quickly. They like got a couple lucky moves early, and it was like, all right, I'm looking at the math of this going like, there's no way.
For Forbidden Island, like it's actually like if you play on the easy mode, even like we actually, when I play with my daughter, we bend the rules a little bit because it's easy to die in that game. Like, because if one person dies, the game's over, and like
I'll have to give that a shot.
Yeah, no, it's really fun.
Hi guys.
The island floods. Oh, you heading out, Ben?
Yeah, it's like 5 a.m. 6 a.m. 5 a.m.
Hey, thanks for dropping by, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed
head out too.
and all about it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, have a good morning, I guess, for you.
Cheers. See you, man. Bye. Happy birthday again.
All right, later, man.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, and then the last game I want to show, and this is one that you might not be able to find. I got it at a convention, so like it's probably not out like publicly, but there are a lot of other games like it. And this one's called Red Shirts, and it's based off of the concept of Star Trek, where red shirts always die. And there are other games with a similar goal, but the whole goal here for this game is to kill your crew as quickly as possible. And in the worst possible ways. And that's what makes it amazing. There's this game I have called Cthulhu Gloom, which has the same concept. You get your character, you have one character, and your goal is to kill your character first.
Yeah. But
like the way you win is by killing your character in the most gruesome, horrific, god-awful ways possible. And the more like add-on cards you have to make your death horrible, like the more chances you have to win. And games like that are fun because it's like the concept of winning is like very different.
They can get kind of cutthroat because you're trying to lose.
Yeah, you're trying to lose, but here's the thing: is like you don't for this one, like you have to kill your whole crew, but like for Cthulhu Gloom, is like you can kill your character pretty quick. But if somebody kills their character in a worse way than they'll win. So like you don't want to kill your character off too.
Yeah, there's a balancing.
You have to prolong their suffering and make it worse for them. And like that's what makes it awesome. Like if anybody who's an H.P. Lovecraft fan would really love it because like a lot of the cards have references to his works and some of the expanded works, and It's really, really good. It's so much fun. It's hard to get like. It takes a while to teach somebody and to get used to it, but like, goddamn, is it fun? And it's very unique in that way. Okay, I'm seeing from the chat Hero Quest. I've heard of that. I think I've heard of Hero Quest. Have you heard of Hero Quest?
The game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never played it. I've seen it at the store.
Okay, is that?
But I've never played it.
I'm trying to think. Is that like a? I'm trying to remember if this is the one I'm thinking of. Okay, yeah, no, I've heard of that one. Oh, okay. Here's something I suggest. Have you ever heard of the like Angry Video Game Nerd from like YouTube? He does a bunch of like he's like the longest running like video game reviewer. Okay, he did this other series called Board James, where he reviews board games. The first one he reviews is Mousetrap, and then he reviews like
every time somebody says Mousetrap, the only thing I can think of is the line from VeggieTales. Mousetrap. I wanted to play Mousetrap. You roll your dice, you move your mice, nobody gets hurt. Every time somebody says Mousetrap, it's the only thing I can think of. I've seen that movie so many times. So it's a like super Christian-y, like kids, cartoon.
I grew up on VeggieTales,
and it's Netflix now has it like remade. It's nowhere near as good as the originals. But the like Christmas special, they get a Buzzsaw Louie, where it's like this little doll with like buzzsaws for hands, and they like end up in this like tossed in the snow, and Bob's like, Mousetrap. I wanted to play Mousetrap. You roll your dice, you move your mice, nobody gets hurt.
Yeah.
It's just every time it just cracks me up. That line is so funny.
Well, like it's awesome because but like Board James, like it starts off pretty simple. It's just this guy like reviewing board games, and like he starts off with Mousetrap. He reviews what's the name of it? Fuck, no, I can't think of it. It's like where you have those like little BBs and like you're shooting like this little like spinny piece, and like the other guy is shooting it towards you, and you're trying to like knock it into their side.
Yeah. I totally my buddy that lived next door to me growing up had that. I can't think of what that. Yeah, the little metal BBs with the spinners.
Yeah. Yep. That was one I had that game. Actually, Jason had that game growing up. My older brother. So like. That was one of the ones he reviews, and like he introduces his friend, and then eventually they introduce
that game had the greatest commercials.
They talk about it. They talk about it in that episode about how awesome the commercial was.
The 90s.
Yeah,
I miss them.
They review like Tornado Rex. They review like Splat and like a bunch of different. But then they review more like kind of like RPG type board games and stuff. But like it's amazing because like you watch the first season of it, and it's like I think it's like 5 episodes the first season. And it's like a YouTube show, and then like the first episode or like the first season ends on this like crazy weird episode. Like it like the characters like die, like the people playing the games like die. No. And the first season ends like it's they're playing Mr. Bucket, that little like game where like the balls would like pop out. And it would be moving around, and you have to scoop it up. And they're like kind of like joking so much about how like the balls pop out of his mouth and stuff like that, and they're making a bunch of jokes. But then like at the end, like towards the end of the video, like the guy is like sleeping, and like the Mr. Bucket comes to life and is like trying to suck on his real balls, like attacking him. It goes like so insane. It's fucking hilarious.
That's funny.
And then like in the second season, it's like it goes even more insane because like the end of the second season, like they're being like murdered by a video, like one of the board games and stuff, and like it's so fucking weird. And then like the third season goes completely off the rails. Like they're like some of them are ghosts and stuff, and then like it's so insane. But they like cover a lot of really bizarre games. Like there's one where they cover like the Family Matters board game, the Full House board game. There's one where it's a crossover between Board James and the Angry Video Game Nerd, where he's reviewing like board games based off of video games. Yeah, and then like the Angry Video Game Nerd keeps coming in and like talking about how shitty the board games are and the video games are better. It's really funny. So I would like, look it up. It's just board James, like board games, but James. There's like 3 seasons of it. I think the total the seasons get a little bit longer with each one, but they're not. It's not like a regular TV show season, but it's totally worth it. It's very nostalgic with a lot of the games he talks about, because there's so many games you're like, oh my God, I remember that game was so much fun. Or there's other games where you're just like, fuck, I want to play that game. That looks awesome. And then just as it goes on, the writing gets like way more like complex and like intense and like horror movie-ish. Like it's really crazy. It's off the fucking walls. I love it though. Like I actually think it's better than his like AVGN stuff. It's like he really, you could tell he really loves horror movies and he likes making movies.
That's
So
funny.
like he turned his like board game review show into like this long like horror movie story arc. It's fucking hilarious.
All right, here's my game recommendation. I was gonna ask if you like card games, like Magic kind of card games, but if you like Cards Against Humanity, you like this
Yeah,
too,
actually,
anyway.
I used to play Magic cards a lot too.
Okay, so if you like Magic, you like this also. It's called Dominion,
Okay.
and it's awesome. It's a lot like Magic cards, except the difference is everybody starts with the same basic cards, and you build your deck as you play.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody gets a like major advantage of like, oh, my deck is fucking amazing. I've spent 4 years building it. And I've put like $800 into my card. Like,
Yeah.
it takes all of that out of the equation, and so you end up playing. Basically, the way it works is you get to buy new cards as you earn bronze, silver, and gold, and you buy more cards.
Yeah.
And then as you buy cards, you get to play. You play turn-based, based on the deck as you build it. And so it's really super fun. I have that and an expansion pack that goes with it.
Nice.
And that game is amazing. Even like my wife, who's like super square, doesn't like nerdy stuff,
Yeah.
likes games, but like likes Cards Against Humanity and like easy, fun games, loves that game. She thought it was amazing. She would never sit down and play Magic with me. Like my brother-in-law and sister play Magic, and like when they come, they bring an extra deck so I can play. Because I don't have enough time to like do that here. I don't have the. I've got like
all of those games take a long time.
I've also got like grown-up adult not nerd friends locally, and so like I just don't have that outlet here. And so when they come, they bring Magic, and she's not interested, but she'll play Dominion all day. It's a blast.
Dominion. Okay, I'm definitely
Dominion.
that.
Yeah.
Because like my wife used to play Magic. Like neither of us play anymore, mostly because like actually I think my wife still has cards like somewhere in storage, but like we just don't play because we don't have the cards anymore. Like my daughter, like we got her a bunch of Pokemon cards for Christmas, and like at some point I've heard it's very similar to Magic how you play. So I'm trying to learn it sometimes so I can play that with her.
At some point, I would like to find a copy of the like 90s Star Wars card game. Like after I move next year, that may be part of my like, hey, new space, we downsized into the place we're at now, knowing we were going to be moving again. And so I like don't have any extra room for anything new at the moment, but like the 1990s Star Wars card game was amazing.
Yeah. No, like yeah, it's because like I have friends that come over, and like one of my friends, he brought this Hail Hydra game where like you were supposed to be like a Hydra agent, and like kind of I guess I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how it goes, but like yeah, like somebody's like a Hydra agent, and like you're all like playing trying to figure out who it is or something like that. But
that's funny. It's kind of like Mafia, the like playing card game.
Yeah. We have like, just like a ton of like card games and board games and stuff like that. My daughter, like, there's this game called Love Letter, and then they did a Munchkin version of it called Loot Letter, and it's like one of my daughter's favorite card games. And the cool thing about it is like there's not that many cards. Like it's a really, really tiny deck, and like a match can go as long as the first person's turn sometimes. Like it's a very quick game. But the thing is that it's supposed to be a round of games. Like you have like a bunch of little like. For the Loot Letter one, for the Munchkin one, it's like supposed to be gold pieces, and it's like little wooden squares painted yellow. Like for other ones, it's crystals or something like that. Like the traditional game's called Love Letter, and you can look it up. Like, but the Munchkin one is fun because of like the designs of the cards and stuff. But yeah, like basically like you play through the round, and like at the end, whoever has like the highest number card wins. But there's a million ways to win. Like there's the highest card is loot, which is like gold. But the thing is if you have the loot card and you lose it in any way, you lose the round. So like, yeah. And then there are cards where like you can guess what the other person has. And if you guess correctly, then they lose. You can make somebody discard their card. And if they have the loot card, they lose. Like there's a bunch of different ways, and like the match can go on all the way until you each just have one card left, or the match can end in the very first one where you could like lay down a discard card and they have loot and they lose. Like, you know, like they can go very fast. So you get this whole round of games, and I think there's like I don't know, there's like 13 pieces, so you're playing like best out of 7 or 6 or something. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun because you got to figure out. I mean, it's so fast paced. You go like really quickly. And when you have more players, it goes on a longer time, you know, because like the pieces are going around. But when you're just playing one-on-one, like, you know, you can just go like we'll go through like really quickly. And my daughter typically like just kicks my ass like every time we play. She's really good at it for some reason. She's good at figuring out what I have and everything. But
yeah, my wife won't play Battleship with me anymore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I got super pissed one night because I accused her of cheating because she didn't miss a single shot.
Yeah.
And then we played again like a couple months later. I'd finally like gotten to the place where I'd like apologized. She's like, all right, I'll play it again, fine. And she missed one shot in that game, and I lost my fucking mind. And I was like, all right, I'm done. There's no way. This is ridiculous.
My wife won't play Monopoly like ever.
Oh yeah, but see,
it's
I grew up playing a lot of
long,
Monopoly, but it's 4 hours. Like in a
I don't ever lose
4
Monopoly
hours
either. Like,
oh, that's funny.
Yeah, no, like I never lose.
Yeah, I can't play.
Like I'm good at like a lot of people. Some people don't play with these rules. I found out, but like my family's always played where like
free parking and all that.
Well, yeah, we do free parking, but we also like after both Park Place and Boardwalk have been sold, you're allowed to make deals with other people and swap properties and stuff.
Oh, that's actually in the rules. Like, if you want to like mortgage your stuff, you're supposed to be able to deal it out.
But I've heard people like don't do that. Someone's like, that's weird. But like, I'd always like I would end up getting Park Place or Boardwalk, you know, almost always. And then I would slowly wear down whoever had the other one, and eventually get them to like agree to a trade. And by once I eventually got them to agree to a trade, I would like, it was game over basically. By then,
right,
I would win. But yeah, like
I bought my brother Fortnite Monopoly for Christmas.
Yeah, nice.
And apparently that only takes half an hour. My mom said they absolutely love. I bought it because he's super loves Fortnite. But it was like, hey, here's Fortnite, but not actually like no screen time. Like during no screen time, you can still play Fortnite, whatever. And my mom was like, yeah, it's like half an hour. It's like a shorter game somehow. And I haven't played it.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what happened. But that was like, the response was like, oh my God, that thing is amazing because Jack loves it. It's 45 minutes. Everything's really super cool. Yeah. But it's 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, no, I've actually heard too that there are like, just even with regular Monopoly, like there are certain rules like.
Yeah, there's speed rules.
Yeah, there are speed rules where you can make the game go by really fast.
Yeah, except that like the old, it's been forever since I played, but the old Monopoly rules, the old speed rules were dumb. It was like so easy. It was just like not fun anymore.
Yeah, like I don't know, like because like I would grow up like I know there was like one thing like some people would do where like you can't purchase properties until
you make a whole full lap.
Yeah, I'm like, fuck that rule. That's stupid.
You want to talk about taking forever? You just added 20 minutes to your game, just like minimum, just for the jump.
Yeah, that's so dumb. I don't know why anybody would want to do that rule. Like, fuck that. That's just ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. That would be something like I know like it's been brought up to me of like there are like ways you can play like Cards Against Humanity as a group online. So like that's something people have wanted to do as like a live stream sometime. Because we've been like, we should play Cards Against Humanity online, and I'm like, well, it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah,
everybody would have to have a set and everything like that, but like because I know there are like ways you can play it online like anonymously with people. I've done that before, but like apparently there's a way where like a group of people can like kind of log into the same like server thing and like like you create your own like little server room or something, and like people would come in, and then like a group of people online in different places can play. And I'm like, yeah, if I can figure that out, that would be something fun to do as a live stream someday. Like just any kind of like board game like that would actually be really fun just to kind of mess around. Like Flux would be an insane one, but I don't think there's anything like that online. Like that's something I definitely like. From the sounds like the kind of board games or the card games you like, definitely look up Flux. It's like FLUXX. Like I said, there's a million different, like, they have like Batman and Cthulhu and Star Trek and like a ton of different versions. But it's, like you're kind of constantly adapting to the gameplay. I get annoyed when playing with my wife though, because like she'll get these cards that like prolong her turn for like an extra 5 minutes, and I'm just sitting there like so bored, like, are you done yet? And like she always wins too. I'm like, she'll be like, let's play Flux. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's like gameplay can take like the
Have you ever
like 5 to 30 minutes or something like that.
Have you ever played Smartass? It's a board game.
Wait. No, I don't. That sounds familiar.
It's a big yellow box with a donkey on the front of it.
I don't think so. Actually,
It's a trivia game.
Okay, no, I don't. I haven't played it. I don't like trivia games, so
nobody will play with me anymore.
Yeah.
It got to the place where like nobody wanted to play with me, and then it was like, all right, we'll play with you, but we're all on a team against you, and it was like 5 against 1.
Yeah. Well, you know Jason, right? My older brother. Like he's someone else. I think is his Twitter name. He's not on Twitter as much, but like he's the co-founder of SNL with me.
Yeah, he does a lot of the Facebook stuff, right?
Yeah, he kind of.
I'm never on Facebook.
Yeah, he's in charge of that mostly. So like, he was in like Indiana one time, and I got everybody. I have this game, Simpsons Seen It, and nobody wants to play with me ever. And actually, like when like you can ask him on Twitter too, like someone else asked him about like what it's like to play Simpsons Seen It with me. They actually, because there's like Seen It has this rule where if you like get the answer correctly, you get to go again. And I was the only one. I was the only one who, if you won, couldn't go again. Everybody else could go again if they won, but if I won, I couldn't go again because I would have basically just one long turn that was me winning the entire game. Like it would be ridiculous because it'd be like it's like a DVD game too. So it'd be like, guess this character, and it would start getting drawn, and like one line would get drawn, and I would know what it was, and I would just like I had this like ridiculous amount of Simpsons trivia knowledge, and like it was basically like seasons like 1 through like 12. I think is pretty much what the thing covered, which is like the seasons I knew the most about. Like I'm sure there's versions. Like I haven't watched like any of the like recent years seasons, but like I like because I love the Simpsons, like especially like in their like like seasons like 3 through 10 are like my absolute favorite seasons. But like I'd watch them like religiously and like constantly and like it was and I would watch the commentary, like just listen to the commentary on every disc and every episode and like look up stuff. I was like so obsessed with the show, so I knew like way too much about it, and like nobody wanted to play that game with me ever.
Yeah. So anyway, with the Smartass thing, it was like, nobody wanted to play me, and then it was like, all right, everybody against Eric. I was like, okay, fine, and I won. And then,
nice.
Like several of the it was like, okay, that doesn't work. And then it was like, all right, well, I'll just start over. You guys keep playing from where you're at, and I'll start over. And I lapped them.
Nice.
So it's like, so the way Smartass works is you get these cards, and the spaces are all colors, and the colors are the category of the card. A lot like Trivial Pursuit, except there's only 3 categories. There's who, what, and where.
Yeah.
And so what happens is you flip the card over, and then there's hints in like descending order of difficulty. So it's harder, and then it gets easier. And the last hint on every card is the initials of the thing that it's talking about. And so what happens is the person reading the card doesn't get to guess, and everybody else gets to guess. And in the person, basically, you can answer at any time. You can guess at the thing at any time, but you only get, if you get it wrong, you have to stop guessing for that card.
Okay.
So there's a balancing act between I'm like 95% sure I know what it is, and if I'm wrong, I don't get to keep guessing.
Gotcha.
So you want to wait until you're 98% sure before you guess and get it wrong. And my head's full of all kinds of stupid trivia of all varieties. Like my dad and I played Trivial Pursuit, and eventually it got to a place where nobody but my little brother would play with us because he didn't mind losing. He just liked playing. And my dad, we always played the Genesis edition of Trivial Pursuit because it was the one we had, and it was from 1980, which is 7 years before I was born. And I could still occasionally, if I got lucky, beat my dad.
Nice.
But nobody else would play with us because he was gonna win, or I was gonna get lucky, and nobody else was gonna come close.
Yeah.
And then my brother got a copy of the 2000 edition of Trivial Pursuit, and we played my dad at Christmas last year, or maybe Thanksgiving, and we blew circles around him.
Nice.
Because he'd like given up on pop culture like in '94, and so he didn't have a clue. Like there was stuff he knew, and there was like things that he hadn't missed or whatever. But a lot of the like music and movies and a lot of the like really pop culture-y stuff in the 2000s, my dad was like working his ass off and had kids and was like not paying attention to anymore. And so it's like if you wanted to like pop culture Trivial Pursuit me like today for like the 20 teens, I'd be so lost.
There's a game I think you would. I gotta remember that. I think it's just called Zero or something like that. But it's like a trivia. It's a completely different kind of trivia game because like they ask you answers, but you have to like, or they ask you answers. Isn't that Jeopardy?
Oh, that's Jeopardy.
They ask you questions, but the answers you have to give aren't like the answer to the question. It's you have to give the least voted answer. Like it'd be kind of like a multiple choice.
It's backwards Family Feud.
Kind of, basically, yeah.
Huh.
It's a very but I suck at trivia games, because they always ask these questions. I'm just like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't, I hate trivia kind of games like that. But unless it's got like kind of a focus, like onto a specific genre or category. But yeah, it was very interesting. If I can, I got it upstairs sometime. I'll try to, if I can remember, I'll send you the name because it's a trivia game I think you probably like because it's, for people that are, I feel like it's a trivia game for people that are really good at trivia games because it kind of trips you up and like has to make you change your way of thinking a little bit,
Yeah, I'm always game for trivia stuff, especially new twists on like not just Trivial Pursuit, because I mean it's gotten to the place where like nobody will play with me because my dad will play with me, my little brother will play with us sometimes, but like nobody else will play. One of my dad's best friends is my dad's two closest friends are both autistic, and so they'll play with us because their heads are also full of mush. just random factoid of nonsense just floating around, banging around in there. But yeah, unless it's one of them, like my dad's got this story from before he even met my mom, so probably mid 70s.
Yeah.
And they went out. He was out with some friends, and they were at this bar, and they were having a like trivial. I think they were playing Trivial Pursuit, but like at the bar, and it might have just been a like pub trivia, whatever. And the prize was it was like get questions right. If you get the question right, you got a free whatever you were drinking. My dad was drinking like double Jack and Cokes.
Nice.
They came back 4 hours later and he hadn't missed a question.
Can they only imagine how wasted he was?
He had to ride home in the trunk of his car because he didn't want to throw up in his car.
That's awesome.
And so like I just whatever that thing is that like my dad's got it like better than I do because he like I don't know, he just has it. But whatever that is, I've got the same thing where like if I heard it once, it's stuck in there and it'll come up when I need it. Like it's just rattling around loose of like that line from VeggieTales where I'm like,
yeah, no, I think I know what you're talking about.
I don't know how long it's been since I've seen it. And obviously like you've got the same thing where it's like you just went off on a like here's all the Marvel stuff that I know and here's all the DC stuff and so like a lot of people have that
for me when it's on like,
all over the place.
Yeah, it's kind of like I get more honed onto like specific things like The Simpsons or like comic books. Like I can go comic book trivia crazy for a while, like just like comic book movies, like all over the place. Like I know a lot of stuff about it. Like actually, like because like I was talking to my brother Jason on the phone one time, and like he's read comic books longer than I have, but like like I was dropping like facts on him that he didn't know about. Like he never even knew Marvel like went bankrupt and stuff like that when I was talking about. He's like, really? I was like, yeah, I don't even know because I just kind of like read stuff all the time and I consume as much knowledge as I can on the topic I love. But yeah, like mine's more focused. But yeah, like I've known people like with you where like they just kind of like retain so much just like random bits of information, and it's like you're not even thinking about it, and it just stays there and like kind of pops back up when you need it randomly.
Yeah, I had a bunch of people in high school that were like, "Hey, you should tutor people on how to like take tests and stuff." And I was like, I don't know how to tell you how I do that. And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, I don't study. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have like, I read the book or I do the homework or whatever, but that's it. And either I understand it or I don't. And with a multiple choice test, like, it just, the right answer pops off the page because I'm like, oh, those two aren't right. And that one makes more sense than the other one. So that's the right answer. Like, and I don't know how to tell you how to get to that place. Like it's just how my brain works. I had a couple people like literally stop talking to me and get mad at me in high school because I was like, I can't help. I would love to help you. Like I would absolutely love to teach you how to like randomly absorb all the information you could possibly need to know to like breeze through high school with basically straight A's without ever actually opening the textbook.
Yeah.
I don't know how I did that.
Yeah. I know a lot of people like, well, no, I've known people like that. I'm like, yeah, I hated fucking so like I'm like bad at like retaining knowledge that way where like I just kind of sit.
My wife
and
likes school and likes books.
Yeah.
And she has to actually study.
For me though, like I've always because like the VA does this thing where they constantly ask you like how do you learn best, because like if they have to like teach you something with your health or something or like how to like work something, and I'm always like, yeah, I learn best by doing. And there's not a lot of like school stuff, like school classwork you can learn by just doing. Like you can't learn history by doing. It's just yeah, so like it's like just retaining a lot of that knowledge gets hard for me. But I have found like if it's delivered in a better format, like that's one of the reasons I feel like a lot of like the way we do school is not the greatest, because like there's other ways people can be taught that they'll retain the information better. Like I know I learned about World War I in school, but I know I found out like in all of my World War I information came way later in life, where I like watched this video series about it and it got me interested, and I looked up some stuff to just like make sure information was correct. And I'm like, like I never really remembered. And then I'm like, holy crap, World War I was just this giant pissing contest. Like, God, I can't believe that was an actual like horrific war, like over nothing really.
Yeah, go listen to Dan Carlin's Blueprint for Armageddon series and Arthur Herman's book 1917. Like those, if you go do those two things, and then you'll have World War I understood, that you will understand A, it was completely Wilson's fault, and less so Lenin, and B, it could have been completely avoided, and C, if they had actually done the right thing and avoided World War I, there wouldn't have ever been a World War II and all of the things that happened because of that. Like, holy shit, is World War I a like nexus of bad historical precedent?
Yeah, because a lot of current problems in the Middle East can be traced back to World War I, because we drew all of their, like, not us specifically, like the winners of World War I drew, like mostly the British drew all those borders over there.
The Ottoman Empire collapsed.
Yeah,
and Britain went in and colonized the Middle East behind the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, these are all your borders now. And like, it wasn't like, they drew borders, and like you have these tribes that hate each other that are now
that was done on purpose.
State, like
that was done on purpose.
Insane.
The British colonial model was, we're going to come in and install into power a minority, like a highly educated minority who's hated by everybody else, because you'll be mad at them instead of being mad at us.
Yeah,
that was their model.
Yeah,
and so when the Ottoman Empire collapsed at the end of World War I, and the Brits took over all of their colonies in the Middle East, they went in and implemented that model. So the discourse on, oh, all of this stuff in the Middle East is historic and it's biblical and it's been going on for thousands of years. And it's like, bullshit. It's been going on for 100 years. And it's the British Empire's fault. And actually, the Brits were bankrupt at the end of World War I. We let them, like the U.S. let them do that and funded it. Like, get the fuck out of here. It's completely caused. It's World War I is the turning point. It is a critical piece in history. It's not taught well, I think, on purpose.
Oh yeah, like I mean, I was surprised at how like little I actually knew about World War I when I started like researching it later in life.
Nobody talks about World War I because World War II was close to it and has a better narrative for the Empire.
Well, too, also World War II like took place when there was a lot more like video and photography was more readily available. Like it was a more documented war too. So we have.
I'll give you a little bit of that, but here, my contention is World War II is taught better and more completely because it is the founding narrative of the American Empire, the way the Empire actually wants to tell it.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
World War I is the founding narrative of the Empire. Yeah. But it's the way the Empire does not want to tell it.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. But I mean, like for my point too, like, you know, like just look at how many documentaries there are on World War II as compared to World War I. So it's not so much like even just people in general, because like you can make a documentary on World War II easily because
the airplanes are cooler, the machine guns are cooler, the tanks are cool,
and you have like legit footage.
Warfare.
Yeah, you have legit footage though. You can be like, here, look at this actual footage. With World War I, like you can mostly show like, you know, like photographs, and then you can like you have to recreate a lot of stuff, and like it's not as like more of like you're not putting people like in that point in time as much. Then
that's why I recommend Dan Carlin. He gets all of the pieces correct. He comes to a lot of bad conclusions from my philosophical political kind of bent. He comes to a lot of bad conclusions, but he gets all of the but he tells an amazing story, and he gets all the details right. He gets all of the little pieces of like, well, we could have maybe been involved. We could have maybe missed this thing. If this had gone the other way, these things might not. And so he does a really good job of like, not so much what if, but like drawing attention to like, okay, if this thing had not happened the way it happened, you don't get the rest of this. So this is a key turning point. Let's focus on. And he does a really good job of hitting the like really crucial, like, understand this thing and understand that thing. And then Arthur Herman's book, 1917, is a comparison of Wilson and Lenin.
From just real quick from the chat, he says that as a joke, but he's like, I'm almost completely ignorant on the subject of World War I and saying like, hey, if you ever want to do a dummies video, you have a viewer. I think that's actually a good idea. Like, I mean, obviously you and me.
One for dummies.
Yeah, like you and me obviously have like read up and like watched stuff and heard stuff about it. I think that would be a good video though, like to kind of really like dive into World War I, not just World War I, but also the impact it's had on the modern world, like
all of it.
Yeah, because like World War I was like kind of
policy issue, every major diplomatic problem in the world today is a reverberation of something that happened during World War I. All of it.
World War I, especially just like even like weaponry wise, it was like the end of like this older era and like the beginning of the more modern era.
Oh, the first episode of Blueprint for Armageddon, which is Dan Carlin's series on this, he talks about how the French cavalry in 1914 at the beginning of World War I literally is still wearing the same uniforms the French cavalry under Napoleon in the 18 teens was wearing. They're identical. He said you can take pictures, and they exist because they've got like really good oil paintings of cavaliers from the 1814, 18 teens with Napoleon up, and photographs in color now because they've been recolorized.
Well, we were
of French cavalry in 1914, and they look identical. He's like, you would have to be a historian of that specific thing to pick out the details that are different.
We were like, and just like even America, like all these places,
no metal helmets, no machine guns.
We were so used to like a specific style of warfare, and then around World War I era, all this new technology started coming around, and we hadn't as defensive and offensive. We hadn't adapted to that yet, and that's where we were doing trench warfare and all this. We were everybody on both sides were poorly adapting to all this new technology, and it was so slow. And it's it shows you and that's one of the kind of interesting, very interesting things about World War I is seeing how primitive it kind of started out, and how even as technology
and how advanced it is at the end.
Yeah,
4 years, the jump that happens between
it's insane.
1914 and 1918 is amazing. You go from literal horse-drawn carts and horses and cavalry with swords, in 1914, to tanks and artillery and machine guns and cars and trucks in 4 years.
Well, because in the beginning of World War I, they didn't have radios,
right?
And one of the worst jobs was they would have their communication lines, and there were wires, and they had to have these people that would crawl out and run these wires from trench to trench, and if the wire would get cut, you'd have to have this guy crawl out and patch up the wire and fix it.
And I'm
no man's out there for snipers, mortars, everything. You're completely exposed. You can easily be killed in a second. It was one of the worst jobs to possibly have. It's insane. But you read up on it, because all this technology was just kind of coming out of nowhere, and just really hitting. We were so used, and we were so stuck in our ways. We weren't ready for this technology in a war scenario. All this technology was just
it's interesting because
advancing.
Carlin and Herman both suggest that the Americans and the Brits were both basically ready for it. They just didn't have the industrial scale capacity on the continent to keep up. But they knew it was coming, because the Brits had been fighting in South Africa for from 1901 to 1940. So the British actually had a very professional, very modern, very well-trained standing army, and then brought in a bunch of recruits, but they had a core of sergeants and NCOs and officers who knew what was up. They knew what was coming, but Britain's not very populous. It's an island nation with limited industrial capacity. They knew what was coming, but couldn't prepare appropriately for it. The Americans knew what was coming because they'd had advisors in Spain during the Spanish Civil War in 1905. And so they'd seen airplanes being used, and they'd seen bits and pieces of okay, here's what's coming. We kind of know what's up. The French and the Russians had no idea. They were completely caught with their pants down. They didn't have a fucking clue. The Russians,
the Ottoman Empire too,
the Ottomans. And the Ottomans had been known as the sick man of Europe for a long time anyway. They were already on the decline pretty heavily.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Germans are the new up and coming. They've got something to prove, and they're German, right? So it's notorious for their efficiency and their engineering prowess, and they're we're gonna crack this nut. We're gonna solve this problem with stereotypical German Prussian efficiency. And so the Germans caught everybody with their damn pants down.
Yeah.
The whole thing was nuts. And the blueprint for Armageddon is I want to say it's 6 episodes, and the shortest one is 4 hours. And I think some of them are they're behind the paywall. They're $1 or whatever now. They're $1 an episode.
Yeah.
It's totally worth the $6 to buy all of them.
There's some really good YouTube videos out there too that are very factual, very well done. You have to be careful when it comes to YouTube, because some places are just poorly researched.
Yeah.
But there are some that do a very good job of diving into just the specific facts of what started it. And because a lot of people you look at a lot of these wars, and this is the reason of World War II is a good example. We were trying to depose Hitler, and then we were pushing the Japanese backwards. Yeah, I know, the basic. It was kind of us versus fascism.
The story's pretty clean if you buy the official narrative.
Yeah,
versus the World War I narrative is not clean at all. Even
the
the
World
official
War I
narrative
narrative too, though, is just it's this gigantic pissing contest where it's insane how much of it could have just been ended by
four of the reigning monarchs were cousins. First cousins.
Yeah.
was Kaiser Wilhelm, Catherine the Romanov, and the king is it King George at that point in England, and then one of the minor monarchies, either I think it's either Spain, probably in Spain. Whoever was, what they were all grandchildren of Queen Victoria.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're like talking to each other during the war. There's correspondence between Catherine and Willem. Like they're actually
it was
talking.
King George V, I want to say.
They're actually talking during World War I. They're like sending letters back and forth of like, hey, we should maybe not like, and the correspondence exists. It's the craziest shit.
It's insane. It's insane. Okay, like real quick, because I think I'm gonna close out the stream here in a minute. What I think would be good, like you and me should definitely talk a little bit more, and like see if anybody else would be interested in like kind of hosting this.
Scott,
I would be interested in like
if you could get Scott Horton to host it, that would be amazing.
Okay, yeah, no, I will talk to him.
He knows this shit too.
Yeah, actually, I'll see if I can. I don't know if I can DM him, but I'll definitely try to talk to him. Yeah, because like what I'd like to do is like you and me, definitely if we could get Scott, like it would be a more like kind of a exclusive panel. Obviously, I wouldn't want to have it any more than like us three if I could get him in and like keep it to 3 people probably at max. And then like what I would like to do beforehand, obviously, would be like us like kind of like coming up with a
here's an outline. Yeah,
an outline, like a schedule kind of thing, what we're going to talk about. We could possibly do more than one if he would be up for it, kind of thing. But yeah, I think it would be great because like a lot of people don't really know like how much, like how that how that fucked up a lot of the Middle East forever. Because like a lot of people talk about this stuff in the Middle East, and I'm like, we can trace that back to World War I when they like redrew those border lines and just like kind of fucked up the whole, like that's where the Middle East really got fucked up, was during that time. So I think that would be really good to talk about. Real quick though, while we're on the, like before we close out, there's one thing I wanted to ask, because some of the like the primitive stuff of World War I reminded me. Have you ever, in World War II, did you ever hear, I think it was like the Mad Jack or something like that from the British Army?
I can't say that I have.
Okay. This guy like was excited like when he was in training and stuff, and he just like he wanted to get the fuck out there to war as soon as possible. And like he pissed off his officers. Like one of the first stories was him like in formation in the morning with an umbrella. It was raining, and like the officer was like, "Why do you have an umbrella?" And he was like, "Because it's raining, sir." And like he got like he pissed everybody off. But like he gets his own unit in World War II, and like there are pictures of him on D-Day, and he's charging out with a fucking claymore. He had a sword, and he's charging the beaches with a sword. He carried a sword, a bow and arrow, and bagpipes. He would shoot people with bow and arrows. He would attack people with swords. And then he would play his fucking bagpipes in the middle of a firefight. Like there was one part where he was like his unit was retreating and he didn't want to retreat. And he was getting impatient. And he was like, "Hey, this will be a lot easier if we just take out this fucking like tank, like this gun nest." And he like fucking charges it with a sword. Like it's insane. And like you look it up, I think it's like, I can't remember. I have to look it up. If I can find the picture, I'll show you. But like, yeah, he's like all these soldiers are like running off their fucking like amphibious vehicle thing onto the beach with their weapons, and this dude's got a fucking sword in his hand. This guy was insane. There was like one thing where like this like he was in some ceremony and this like firefight broke out somewhere, and he was excited, and he runs to the firefight, and he's got his fucking like dress uniform on, and he starts fucking getting engaged and stuff. Like the guy was like born for war, but like you read up about, like this is the most hardcore motherfucker you've ever seen. Like it's insane to read about him. Like yeah, he was charging, like there was something like where like his foxhole got surrounded, and like he didn't like officially surrender. I think he just started like either he started singing or playing his bagpipes just really loudly while they're like yelling at him, and he got like knocked out or something and taken captive. But like he wouldn't officially surrender. The guy like just sounded like he was off his fucking rocker. But like after the war, like he gets married and has kids and everything. But it's just like, dude, this guy was like fucking insane. It's one of like the most interesting like World War II like facts like you could ever read about of like this dude actually existed and was that fucking crazy. And I imagine it terrified the Nazis. Because you can imagine having a gun and this dude's charging at you with a bow and arrow on his back and a fucking sword, like just screaming at you.
Oh yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah,
that scenario.
Horrifying.
That scenario equals I win.
But no, like I'm sure like some of them thought about it, but like this guy never died.
That part's amazing, but I'm like,
yeah,
you're charging.
How he survived? Because you imagine, because like you're thinking like, okay, I win, but he just keeps coming. He just keeps coming, and
that's nuts.
Coming. Like that's the part where I think it demoralized people. Like where they were just like, this dude doesn't die. Like, is he immortal? He's just, like he's got a sword.
Yeah, after a while it gets crazy, right? Like the first time you see him, you're like, okay, I'm gonna.
No, I'm sure the first time people are like
6 months later, and he's still doing this at every firefight he shows up at.
Legend around him,
right? Yeah.
I mean, like he's taking out your fellow buddies with a bow and arrow, and you got a machine gun. It's like, and he just keeps winning.
I can only imagine the like German commanders behind the lines going, "Why doesn't somebody just kill this guy?"
Right. It's just nuts. So, like, I mean, I can't only imagine how like people who like were on the opposing end of him, like, probably initially thought like, "Oh, this is an easy target," and then by the time he's like right outside your machine gun nest, it was just like, okay, who the fuck is this dude? Like, is he human? Like, it's insane. Like. I don't know. It still blows my fucking mind. Okay, so yeah, the stream's gone on for over like 3 hours. I think it's the longest one I've done in a long time. I don't know. It was a hell of a lot of fun. I'm really glad you were able to make it too. So, all right, yeah, I'll call it quits. Because I need to go to try to get some sleep. I got a bunch of shit to do tomorrow. So, yeah. Well, Michael,
happy birthday.
Yeah. So thank you, and then happy birthday to Michael as well. And yeah, I'll try to reach out to Scott and see if we can like kind of set something up in the future where we have time to like come up with an outline or something like that. But yeah, it was an awesome time. Everybody who has watched, like Set Theory, David, Flamingo from the chat earlier. Really appreciate you guys like being a part of the chat and everything, and had a lot of fun tonight. Was the main goal, was just kind of hang out and have a good time. So I think we accomplished that. So, all right, we'll keep in touch, and good night, everyone. See you. Thanks.